It all begins in the city of Ale, which unfortunately became humanity's last stronghold and is now completely up in flames. The place suffers from violent explosions on all sides. The walls can't hold up and start to crumble from the devastating impacts. Amidst the destruction, our MC finds himself on his knees, panting and heavily injured. A menacing figure appears before him through the fire, warning him that he is the only one left standing. The enemy materializes a massive sword of glowing flames in its hand. Revealing its demonic form, the creature heads straight for the MC, calling him by the name Colin Hall. Dragging the flaming blade across the ground, the demon slowly advances toward the young man. Even exhausted and wounded, Colin maintains a fixed and determined glare on his opponent. Observing the human's resilience, the monster comments that he kept fighting even as the last one standing. Because of this persistence, the villain decides to give him the privilege of choosing how he prefers to meet his end. With a slight smile on his bloodstained face, our hero says it will be right there. But deep down, he wonders if this is truly the end of everything. It turns out that 1 year ago, the demon suddenly launched a massive invasion against humanity, destroying several cities in the blink of an eye. The regular soldiers tried to fight bravely, but they fell without a chance against the magic-wielding monsters. All of this happened because magic was a privilege reserved only for nobles with superior bloodlines. These aristocratic mages thought they were on top of the world in their fancy clothes. They raised their staffs, forming complex magic circles in the air to cast spells. Everyone faithfully believed these nobles would be the great heroes who would save humanity from the threats. The attacks rained down on the enemies in violent magical explosions trying to stop their advance. But unfortunately, those arrogant men couldn't even imagine the harsh reality of the battlefield. That level of magic they were so proud of was useless against the monster's defenses. For the demons, it was all child's play as they devastated the cities with giant flames. Despair took over the mages' faces as they realized the overwhelming difference in power. The scene turned into an absolute nightmare of destruction, and the MC regrets that things could have been different. In that moment of ruin, he drags himself across the ground, desperately reaching his hand near a fallen body. His regret is focused on a bluish magic book, wishing he had gotten his hands on it sooner. If he had succeeded, things wouldn't have reached this miserable point where he is cornered. Bringing the attention back to the present, the demon smiles wickedly and asks if he has already thought of the best way to meet his maker. The monster suggests it wouldn't mind tearing his limbs off or burning him to a crisp like his companions. With no patience for threats, the warrior replies that the enemy talks way too much. The creature of flames takes a slight step back, failing to understand the human's audacity. Gripping the hilt of his blade firmly, he mutters that he has no other choice but to use a certain hidden skill. Charging with everything he has at the monster, he tells the demon to zip it once and for all. The impact of the steel blade hits the creature's flaming arm, generating an intense flash the moment it is blocked. Putting all his strength into the strike, the MC yells, trying to break the opponent's defense. The violent clash between the sword and the infernal body raises a cloud of dust around the two combatants. The monster narrows its eyes, paying attention to the human's unusual attack. Without losing rhythm, the warrior launches another slashing assault at high speed. Suddenly, the demon lets out a surprised cry upon taking a direct hit to the chest. After the attack, Colin lands firmly on the ground, dragging his boot across the stones to keep his balance. The enemy jumps back, creating an explosion of flames while questioning if the human thought he could win with just sword skills. Letting out a dark laugh, it claims that humanity devoid of divine grace is weak and useless. But right in the middle of its arrogant speech, the monster's body suffers a sudden cut, splashing dark fluid into the air. Shocked by the wound, it roars, asking how human swordsmanship managed to scratch its indestructible body. Taking advantage of the opening, the MC explains that it would indeed be impossible to do that with normal swordsmanship. Gripping the hilt with two hands, the steel blade begins to emit a very strong bluish magical glow. He reveals he is using a forbidden sword technique that sacrifices the user's own soul and life force, completely changing the tide of battle. With a powerful leap, he strikes from above, aiming straight for the enemy's blind spot. A fast and fierce exchange of blows takes place, with trails of light cutting through the air in all directions. The monster fights back with a heavy flaming punch, but the warrior slides, narrowly dodging certain doom. Spotting a massive opening in the opponent's defense, Colin's eyes shine intensely, focused on the goal. In a quick and lethal move, he delivers a clean cut, taking off the creature's right arm amid a spray of red. Right after, the blade crosses the demon's chest, tearing deeply into it. Despite the brutal damage, the monster manages to grab the human's weapon with its other hand, mocking this so-called forbidden sword. With a victorious smile, it claims the outcome would be different if the human had launched that as a surprise attack. The pressure exerted by the demonic hand is so great that the glowing blade starts to crack beneath its fingers. The steel can't withstand the force and shatters into thousands of pieces, leaving the warrior completely unarmed. Advancing for the final strike, the monster warns that the human failed his mission by just one step. The flame-engulfed hand heads straight for the MC's face, telling him it's game over. A devastating energy explosion sweeps the area, completely destroying the ruins around the castle. The warrior's body is thrown far away and falls on his back, covered in dust and severe injuries. With his face bruised and his vision blurry, he mutters bitterly that not even sacrificing his own soul was enough. Grabbing the young man's neck, the monster says it doesn't know where he learned that technique, but declares that this is the end of humanity. Being forcefully lifted from the ground, Colin's body goes limp as he coughs up dark fluid, unable to breathe. In his final thoughts, he regrets that even fighting with everything he had, the most he managed to do was take off one of the enemy's arms. The image of his guildmates flashes through his mind, and he apologizes to everyone for failing the mission. The demon smiles sadistically as the human's consciousness fades, confirming his final defeat. The warrior's fallen body hangs from the creature's hand, dripping onto the ruined ground. One drop falls directly onto that mysterious magic book lost in the rubble, glowing upon contact. At that exact moment, the cover reacts, activating its hidden power and projecting a large bluish magic circle into the air. In the blink of an eye, the MC wakes up, gasping for air as if waking from a nightmare. He looks around, realizing he is healed in a dark place, and asks himself where on earth he ended up. From the shadows, a deep and unknown voice echoes through the mysterious environment, calling Colin Hall's name. Startled and quickly taking a defensive stance, he asks out loud who is hiding and watching from there. His eyes widen when he notices the energy source that brought him to that bizarre place. Floating right in front of him, the exact same magic book he wished for during the fight is glowing brightly. Amazed, the human immediately recognizes it as a top-tier grimoire. A voice echoes from that artifact, stating that the warrior's blood awakened it and that it will now help the hero return to the past to fix everything. Processing the information, the MC repeats the entity's words, in disbelief at the possibility of starting over from scratch. With a clenched fist, he declares he has no idea who that mysterious voice is. But he makes it very clear that if there is truly a chance to go back in time and change things, he isn't going to waste it. With an intense gleam in his eyes, the hero states that this is a wonderful opportunity he wouldn't even dare to dream of. Satisfied with the answer, the grimoire opens its pages, announcing it will stay by his side from now on to teach him how to master magic and grant his deepest wish. Suspended in that void, the young warrior faces the beginning of a new journey, feeling the magical power envelop him completely. The regression spell begins to distort the space around him, shattering reality into countless glowing pieces. With his thoughts focused on the monster that took him down, the swordsman asks the magic book to fulfill its promise immediately. Staring right at the flash of light, he braces himself for the transfer that will change history, filled with an unshakable determination. With the grimoire in its hands, a mysterious hooded figure declares that he will now see a new future unfold. Suddenly, the scene changes drastically and agitated voices start chanting the butcher's name non-stop. Our hero blinks, dazed, trying to process what just happened with the time regression. Looking around, he realizes he ended up in the middle of a slave arena where the audience is going crazy, calling for action. With a standard sword and a wooden shield in his hands, he notes the basic equipment and questions his new reality. Right in front of him, a massive gladiator known as the Butcher swings a giant hammer, prepping a brutal attack. With a bored sigh, the MC quickly understands the dangerous situation the system dropped him into. In the stands, the spectators celebrate the fact that the fighter didn't go down on the first strike, guaranteeing the crowd's entertainment. From the high VIP box, Viscount Slaith of the Rhine territory agrees that this is exactly how a battle should be. With a nasty smile, the aristocrat comments on the role of those lower-class people in society. While the giant furiously charges at the hero, the noble claims that the commoners are no different from the slaves fighting in the arena. With a calm expression, our MC simply lowers his head as the Viscount's voice concludes that they all exist solely for the elite's entertainment. The giant lands a devastating blow on the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust, while the Viscount points out they are nothing but disposable pawns. Up in the stands, the crowd goes wild, bursting into laughter and cheering at the brutality of the combat. The ecstatic mob starts chanting the butcher's name in unison, demanding more intensity. With a sadistic smile plastered on his face, Slaith enjoys the scene, encouraging the beatdown even more. From the top of the arena, the unison echo of the fighter's name takes over the entire environment. Watching the fight closely, the bearded man next to the Marquis seems to recognize something familiar in the young warrior's stance. Standing before the Colossus, our MC grips his sword firmly and concludes that his suspicions were right. Unable to understand his opponent's confidence, the giant widens his eyes, slightly confused by the situation. Staring the brute down from below, the hero confirms he really did travel back to the past, landing exactly in the era when he was forced to fight as a gladiator slave. Raising his hand and seeing a blue magic circle glow on his palm, he wonders if the grimoire ended up fusing with his own body. With a sharp and focused look, he quickly grasps the advantages of this new condition. Wasting no time, the swordsman pushes off the ground, shattering the stones with the force of his movement. He dashes at high speed toward the giant, leaving a trail of blue light in his wake. As he leaps toward the enemy, the young man promises himself that from this exact moment on, everything will be different. Taken by shock, the butcher can barely react as the MC declares he is going to completely change his own destiny. In the blink of an eye, the hero's blade cuts through the air, taking the butcher's head right off. With a smooth and precise landing, he watches the opponent's colossal body crash heavily into the arena. Focused on his grand goal, the warrior knows he needs to alter the future where humanity was wiped out by the demons. Up in the stands, the audience goes into a state of absolute shock upon witnessing the fall of the invincible gladiator. The hero brings the image of the magic book to mind, recognizing that his only chance is to master all the magic recorded in that artifact. Standing amidst the dust, he reflects that trying to learn sorcery as a mere slave is an impossible dream, and that's why he needs a plan. Looking up at the upper boxes, the MC plots his next move. The main target is to infiltrate the prestigious family of Marquis Darius Hall, who rules the entire Rhine territory. Staring at the nobles from afar, he promises himself he will do it much faster than in his past life. At that moment, he remembers how all the commoners had bet their meager coins on him in the past. Handing their money to the bookies, the everyday folks faithfully believe the kid would defeat the monster raised by the elite. With a bag of coins in hand, the man regretted having to defy Lord Slate's orders. Desperate, the poor guy tearfully begged for the kid to lose the fight, because otherwise he would end up losing his life. The real truth is that Slaith was trying to sacrifice the MC on purpose just to win the sympathy of the other aristocrats. With his sword resting on his shoulder in a relaxed posture, the swordsman decides to use this whole conspiracy to his advantage to get into the Hall family. With a sharp gaze, our hero shows absolutely no intention of backing down and flashes a confident smile. He points his blade at the gates, demanding they stop stalling and send out the next opponent right away. Up in the boxes, one of the nobles slams his fist on the table, furious with the unexpected result. The men in suits immediately confront Slaith, questioning if the butcher wasn't the guaranteed bet to win. To pressure the host, one of the rich guys makes a point to remind him that he bet a ridiculous amount of money on that fight. Visibly desperate and sweating cold, Slaith asks everyone to calm down, assuring them that it's all still part of his master plan. Watching the commotion from afar, the bearded advisor asks Marquis Darius what he thought of that last attack. Impressed, the veteran states it was a powerful and extremely precise cut, something rare even among the Empire's greatest warriors. With a smirk, the Marquis confesses that the best part was seeing that slave defy the orders of the despicable Slaith. Back in the arena, two new armed gladiators charge at our MC, screaming at the top of their lungs. Attempting to manage the crisis with the betters, Slaith argues that giving the commoners a little bit of hope will make them spend even more money. With a wave of his hands, he asks his guests to relax as the situation remains under control. But on the inside, the Viscount is panicking over seeing Colin score 2 victories in a row and promises that in the next round, he will be torn to shreds. Against all of the nobility's expectations, the hero defeats the thugs with ease and steps on them, while the crowd screams his name in a frenzy. Looking down and seeing his fighters knocked out, Slave widens his eyes, completely in disbelief at the disaster. Tired of the excuses, the aristocrats surround Slave, asking if he's trying to make fools out of them, since that wasn't the deal. Grinding his teeth in pure rage, the Viscount watches the kid down below, trying to figure out what is going on in his head. With his back against the wall, Slaith raises his hand and loudly orders his guards to gather all available gladiators immediately. Noticing the host's desperation, the bearded advisor comments that things are getting very interesting. The gates open, revealing a literal army of heavily armed fighters marching into the arena. Facing the crowd of enemies, our hero recalls that Marquis Darius always dreamed of a world where everyone could learn magic. Surrounded on all sides, he remembers that in his past life, the noble had entrusted him with that great hope. Even if they failed to make it a reality before, the warrior is certain that with his current skills, anything will be possible. In his combat stance, he concludes that merely beating the opponents won't be enough to catch the Hall family's attention, so he calls for them to all come at once. After hearing the slave's bold taunt, the crowd goes wild, calling the kid completely insane. Boiling with hatred, the gladiators launch their attack, ordering their comrades to wipe him out. With controlled breathing, the swordsman lets out a deep sigh, bracing for the impact. In a fluid motion, he slides across the ground, dodging a giant axe with absurd ease. Using the enemy's momentum, the warrior leaps high into the air, leaving the thugs confused when they realize they only hit the wind. With an agile mid-air spin, the hero preps his lethal counterattack, taking advantage of the wide-open guard. Upon landing, he delivers a clean strike to the back of one of the brutes, taking him out of the game in an instant. With a cold and focused expression, the MC shows no sign of fatigue or hesitation. Without even looking back, he walks calmly as more enemies advance, thirsty for action. With a casual kick, he knocks a spiked mace out of his way as if it were just a pebble. When a lancer tries to pierce him, the hero intercepts the wooden shaft with his arm, snapping the weapon in half and leaving the opponent in shock. Like a truly untouchable shadow, he glides under the enemy blades, moving through the arena flawlessly. Suddenly, a massive gladiator appears, swinging his heavy sword in a furious vertical strike. Staring straight ahead, our MC analyzes the enemy weapon's trajectory without blinking. With his hands firmly on the iron sword's hilt, he focuses all his strength for the final move. In an incredibly fast upward slash, he tears through the giant's body from bottom to top, causing a splash. The power of the strike is so absurd that a sharp blade of air crosses the arena and shoots straight up toward the VIP boxes. Seeing the blast of energy heading his way, Viscount Slaith panics, cowering in fear. But at the very last second, Marquis Darius draws his own sword and blocks the energy, deflecting the danger. The impact completely shatters the protective glass, scattering shards all over the nobility's lounge. Completely trembling, Slaith is left speechless when he realizes the target of that attack was none other than him. The shock of the impact makes the glass shards rain down over the luxurious aristocratic box. Amidst the dust, our MC maintains his firm posture with his sword in hand. With a calm look, he stares up at the aristocrats as if that attack was no big deal. Boiling with rage, Viscount Slaith wonders how that mere slave dared to humiliate him like that and swears he will make him pay dearly. Trying to hide his panic, the corrupt noble lets out a nervous laugh while the wall behind them shows the giant crack from the impact. The bearded advisor pokes fun, saying the chess piece just became the player and Slaith's plans are completely ruined. The other nobles pressure the host, demanding action and calling for the maximum penalty for the slave who dared bare his fangs at the elite. With a dark look, Slaith thinks about what the ultimate punishment would be for trash like that. Trying to regain control of the situation, he questions if looking down on others doesn't go against the nobility's common sense. The guests remain silent, waiting for the cornered host's next move. With a heavy thud of his staff on the ground, Slaith turns to the Marquis, asking if he is still chasing those fake ideals. At that moment, green energy starts gathering around the Viscount's hand, indicating he is about to use magic. With an arrogant speech, The creep recalls that 1,000 years ago, their ancestors received magic directly from God, creating a clear hierarchy in this world. Claiming that the nobles became divine proxies, he accuses Darius of clinging to totally misguided ideologies. Pointing the glowing staff at the veteran, he asks if the Marquis really intends to challenge their great god. Faced with all that elitist talk, our MC simply lets out a mocking laugh. Annoyed by the interruption, Slaith turns to the arena, demanding to know what that insect's problem is. To everyone's surprise, the warrior leaps straight onto the box's ledge, causing panic in the audience, who immediately call for the guards. Locking an intimidating glare on his target, the swordsman calls the Viscount by name with total contempt. With his blade raised, he taunts the noble, saying that if he really is a representative of God, then he should prove it by fighting in the deity's place instead of just running his mouth. The crowd goes into absolute shock, commenting that the slave has completely lost his mind and that now all he can do is pray not to get destroyed. The other aristocrats smirk, finding that audacity completely pathetic and reckless. Meanwhile, Marquis Darius remains in absolute silence, simply analyzing the young warrior's behavior. Looking at the kid down below, Slaith calls him a filthy slave with obvious disgust. With veins popping on his face, the Viscount accuses the hero of ruining his plans and mocking God on top of it. Letting the fury take over, he conjures a large magic circle around himself, outraged at the sheer nerve of being challenged to a duel. Suddenly, the MC widens his eyes as he hears the grimoire's voice detecting the presence of mana. A magic status screen pops up, revealing that Slaith only has beginner-level wind magic and 0 resistance. Wasting no time, the noble fires a slicing magic attack, warning that if the kid wants to meet his maker that badly, he will gladly do him the favor. Faced with the imminent danger, the warrior from the future doesn't show a single ounce of fear. Conjuring a massive gust of wind, Slaith yells that he's going to send that trash straight to the afterlife. The noble's face shows absolute confidence in an easy victory. The guests quickly recognize the spell as the wind blade and start betting on how many pieces the slave will be sliced into. The green energy surges through the arena, creating a fierce and relentless whirlwind. With a wicked smile, the Viscount tells Darius to watch closely and see the true power gap between a slave and a noble. The attack hits the target dead on, completely tearing the MC's shirt, but he remains standing perfectly still. Through his own status screen, the kid confirms that his beginner magic resistance and grandmaster swordsmanship are more than enough to tank that. Realizing the strike had no effect, he understands that the enemy magic is just too weak. With a slight smile, the hero thinks it's amazing how this bizarre grimoire ability is extremely useful in a place like this. Enveloped by the gale, he remembers the demon lord's strength and concludes that this little breeze doesn't even come close to dark magic. With a simple swipe of his arm, he dispels the entire green storm, calling it nothing but a passing breeze. Seeing his ultimate magic swatted away with a slap, Viscount Slaith goes into total shock. The other elite members swallow hard, unable to believe what their eyes just saw. In that brief moment, the swordsman dashes like lightning, pushing his body forward at a terrifying speed. In complete desperation, Slaith draws his sword, stumbling over his own words. The sound of metal quickly echoes as he tries to defend himself. In a spectacular leap, the MC comes down with a crushing attack, forcing the noble to block the strike with great difficulty. The Viscount breaks into a cold sweat, feeling the absurd weight of his opponent's strength. Landing softly, the hero presses the tip of his iron blade right against the defeated aristocrat's neck. The dust settles, revealing that the untouchable host is now completely at the gladiator's mercy. Suddenly, the warrior's eyes widen as he senses another mana signature approaching. A purple magic circle glows intensely on the ground, forcing the kid to leap backward in a defensive move. Strange, shadowy hands start sprouting from the magic mark, as if they were alive. Before he can react, the energy claws grab his arms and legs, leaving him floating and totally confused. More dark arms wrap around his body, even squeezing his neck brutally. Soon the sound of heavy armor announces the arrival of unexpected reinforcements. A platoon of elite knights marches into the arena, declaring they came in response to the emergency call. Identifying the swordsman as the prisoner who insulted the nobility, they announce his detention in the name of God. Bound by the shadows, our MC groans in pain as the magic crushes him without mercy. The leader of the Divine Guard wields his giant sword with a threatening and authoritative presence. The narrator reveals that these soldiers belong to the magic tower and possess strength that surpasses even regular nobles. This organization's mission is to guarantee the supremacy of bloodlines and maintain divine authority at all costs. Faced with that situation, the MC realizes it would be very easy to break this containment magic using just his brute strength. But out of caution, he decides to hold back because he doesn't want to attract unwanted attention from the tower's big shots right off the bat. Knowing it's all or nothing, the warrior makes an extremely dangerous decision to make it out of this alive. Even restrained by the purple hands covering his mouth, he gathers whatever breath he has left. In a shout that echoes throughout the venue, he demands the magic be dispelled and proclaims himself as Colin Hall, the son of Marquis Darius. The elite guards stop immediately, totally confused by the bombshell revelation. Hearing his own last name, Marquis Darius is stunned, unable to believe what he just heard. The audience goes into an absolute frenzy, whispering that they had never heard of a hidden heir. With a confident look, the fake noble asserts that the Divine Guard would never dare lay a hand on a member of the aristocracy. In his mind, he wonders how the veteran will react to this insane gamble. Furious at the interruption, Viscount Slaith charges forward with his sword raised, screaming that inventing a lie like that to save his life is unforgivable. In a cowardly leap to execute the immobilized MC, the noble declares that the kid deserves to be punished 10,000 times for that blasphemy. Suddenly, a shout to halt echoes through the arena, interrupting the incoming attack. Taking a firm step forward, Marquis Darius appears imposing, making Slaith back off and stutter the veteran's name. Trying to justify himself, the coward quickly explains he was just about to take care of that insolent brat. Completely out of patience, the old noble calls the host a fool and asks how he dares drag his family's name through the mud like that. The magic tower guards stand paralyzed, not understanding absolutely anything that is going on. Slaith also wears a face of complete shock and mental confusion. Restrained by the dark magic, the MC gives a subtle smile, deducing that handing him over to the Merchants Guild must have straightened things out a bit. The swordsman stands firm, facing the whole situation with an unshakable posture even while covered in purple sparks. Staring at the kid, the Marquis states that instead of fixing his manners, he dared to raise his hand against the Viscount, and he is impressed by such audacity. Hearing these words, the hero concludes in his thoughts that this risky bet actually paid off big time. The warrior's crazy plan to pretend to be an heir resulted in his absolute victory in that moment. Turning his attention back to the event host, Marquis Darius adopts a more formal tone. He offers sincere apologies for the trouble caused by his idiot son and asks permission to make amends on the boy's behalf. Diving fully into character, the MC feigns outrage, claiming it was the Viscount who insulted his father first. With a severe expression, the veteran orders his supposed son to stay completely quiet. Addressing the leader of the Divine Guard, the Marquis guarantees he will have a very serious talk with that fool. Given that guarantee, the noble dismisses the knights, stating they can all head back to the magic tower now. Seeing his prey slip away, Slaith panics and yells that there is no way they can let that man go free. Consumed by rage, the host points his blade, demanding to know if Darius thought he could fool him with such a ridiculous act, and says he won't let anyone take that slave away. The MC breaks a cold sweat for a second, surprised by his opponent's stubborn insistence. With his eyes bulging with madness, the Viscount declares he will end the kid's run right there, no matter what happens. A loud bang echoes through the arena as the tension hits its peak between the nobles and the soldiers. But instead of panicking, the hero just lets out a mocking laugh. Keeping his smile, he reminds the aristocrat that he just used the word anyone. Then, the kid asks if that includes the Lord of the Rhine territory, who is standing right in front of him. Soon after, he also adds the Divine Guards who came to capture him in God's name, pointing out they would naturally be included in that threat as well. With a mischievous look, the fake heir concludes that, in other words, the host is planning to raise the flag of rebellion. The Viscount's face loses all its color as he realizes the extreme severity of what he just said. Terrified and trembling from head to toe, he backs away, trying to stutter that that wasn't what he meant at all. Totally defeated by his own ego, the coward drops his weapon, letting it fall onto the cold arena floor. The dark magic claws begin to fade from the swordsman's body as the guard leader declares it was all just a misunderstanding. After a respectful bow to the Marquis, the elite knights announce they are taking their leave. Before leaving, the commander turns his head, shooting a threatening glare at the cowardly Slaith. With a severe tone, the soldier warns he will make sure to report that incident directly to the magic tower. Kneeling on the ground in pure despair, the host is told that the organization will contact him in the future regarding his punishment. Free from his binds, our MC takes a deep breath and rubs his chest, feeling a huge wave of relief for having survived. While walking out of the arena, the commander tells his subordinates that they need to report on the man named Colin in great detail. A female knight beside him asks in confusion if he is referring to the Marquis' supposed son. Down the hallways, the team leader wonders how it would be possible for the territory's lord to have one son without absolutely anyone knowing. With unshakable conviction, the commander states that that man definitely does not share the same blood as the veteran. The subordinate recalls that the kid remained unfazed even after getting hit by the containment magic and asks if there is a special reason why he is being protected. Deep in thought, the leader admits he doesn't have the answers, but orders his men to monitor the swordsman and report his every move from now on. In unison, the knights accept the order, confirming they will carry out the espionage mission. Far from there, a luxurious carriage travels peacefully down a sunlit road. From inside the vehicle, the sound of a loud and hearty laugh breaks the silence of the trip. Inside the carriage, Marquis Darius laughs openly, praising the kid's excellent acting in the arena. Sitting face to face with the noble, the MC maintains a quiet and observant posture. The veteran expresses his gratitude for the help provided during the confrontation with the cowardly host. In response, the warrior mentions that the Marquis ordered his butler to handle the payment for his release and gets ready for the next step. To break the ice, Darius suddenly asks if the swordsman has ever been on a battlefield, catching the kid off guard. With an analytical look, the noble points out that his movements were those of a very experienced warrior and asks if he trained under a master. At that moment, the hero from the future starts fabricating a very convincing backstory. He explains that he was born in a remote village, and after the untimely passing of his parents, the villagers sold him to a slave trading company. But his luck changed when a certain noble bought him and began teaching him the basic theories of magic and combat techniques. With his head held high and a soft expression, he claims that that man took care of him just like a real father. Staring at his own hand, the MC reveals that this person entrusted him with a grand ideal, but in the end, he wasn't able to achieve it. Armed with a sharp determination, the warrior declares that this time around, he wants to live up to those expectations. Touched by the strong promise that he will achieve this goal even if it costs him his life, the Marquis is visibly moved. In his thoughts, the veteran concludes that the wind attacks didn't work because the kid already knew the basics of magic, and he admires that strong heart that never lets the flame of hope die out. The old aristocrat's eyes shine brightly as he sees massive potential in that young man in front of him. Recognizing the figure of a true leader in the kid's posture, the noble feels an immediate connection. The veteran finally finds a glimmer of hope, believing that this young man might be the only one capable of making his grand ideals a reality. The deep reflection is cut short when the driver politely announces they have just arrived at their destination. The heavy carriage wheels stop turning, marking the end of the long trip. Through the window, the imposing and magnificent Hall family mansion can be seen, bathed in the afternoon light. The estate is vast and luxurious, showing off the true power and influence of the territory's lord. As soon as the vehicle's door opens, the Marquis instructs the kid to follow closely behind him. Paying attention to the scenery outside, the MC listens as the old man states that from now on, he is no longer a slave. While walking toward the huge entrance staircase, Darius makes a point to warn him that this doesn't mean he scored a life of peace and quiet. The future warrior carefully listens to the warning that survival of the fittest is the absolute law of that world. Soon, he stops with his back to the bottom of the steps as the Lord warns that his help ends exactly there. With a slight nod, the veteran declares it will be entirely up to the young man whether or not he can overcome his next major trial. Far from feeling scared, the swordsman displays a calm expression, totally prepared for any challenge. With an approving smile, the Marquis wraps up the conversation, saying he's counting on the young man's skills. Watching the old man walk up the stairs, the hero concludes that phase 1 of his infiltration plan into the nobility was an absolute success. The Hall family has always been absurdly obsessed with preserving the authority of their magic and bloodline, only marrying their equals. But Marquis Darius is a rare exception, since he was born to a mother who was merely a servant. Because of those humble roots, he faced terrible prejudice in the past. Even with everything stacked against him, the veteran used relentless effort and overwhelming strength to rise to the highest levels of the nobility. Thus, he became the Lord of the Rhine territory, building a name respected by all. Walking down the mansion's massive hallways, the old man makes it clear he doesn't care at all about the kid's past. The two walk side by side through the enormous estate bathed in afternoon light. With a confident smile, the Lord declares that in that place, strength is absolutely everything that matters. He promises to give the swordsman anything he desires, be it insane wealth, high status, or even great honor. The noble raises his hand to emphasize the weight of that golden promise. However, there is a very clear condition, since the kid needs to prove he has the skills necessary to conquer all of that. Looking over his shoulder, the Marquis tells the young man to keep that rule burned into his memory. At that, the MC stops walking and repeats the word anything in a thoughtful tone. With a sharp glint in his eye, he decides to test just how far the noble's word goes. Without any hesitation, the warrior asks what would happen if he wanted the seat of territory lord right away, leaving the veteran completely shocked by his boldness. Still processing the guy's insolence, the old man repeats the words, "Lord's seat." Right after, he throws his arms up and lets out a hearty laugh that echoes through the hall. Far from being offended, the veteran challenges the young man, saying that if he has that much confidence, he should try to take the spot from him. Our MC stares at the older man, concluding that the Marquis is a true defender of meritocracy. Precisely because he gives equal opportunities to everyone, this mindset makes the Lord hated by the magic bloodline supremacists. The conversation is interrupted by the sound of footsteps from a woman in a red dress, welcoming her husband back. The veteran's smile vanishes instantly as he faces the figure ahead. Waiting for the patriarch's return are his wife Katrina Williams and his oldest son, Freed Hall. The noble dryly remarks that he hadn't announced his return, realizing he can't hide anything from the woman. He ironically points out that a little bird must have told her everything about the small spat with Viscount Slaith. The Countess brings a smoking pipe to her lips, holding an elegant and dangerous pose. Without lowering his guard, Darius keeps his sharp gaze directed at his wife. In his mind, the old man notes that this woman, who acts like the true shadow ruler, sent spies to track his every move. The swordsman stares at the spoiled lady, remembering very well that in the past, it was she who destroyed the Marquis's ideals and aimed to take him out. Having inherited her late parents' fortune, this woman is treated as an equal to the Lord and now constantly plots to place her own son as the family's successor. The time traveler remembers how he fell right into her trap in his past life, but swears that this time the story will play out very differently. Taking the lead in the situation, the kid claims to be incredibly honored to be greeted by the two of them. With his hand on his chest, he reveals that his name is Colin Hall and that starting today, he will dedicate all his strength to serving the family. The oldest son short-circuits upon hearing that Slave use the noble last name. The Countess shoots a look of disgust, asking who this trash thinks he is. She considers it an unforgivable offense for a mere slave to claim a royal name. With a snap of her fingers, the Viper calls for a servant named Cornell. The woman scolds the lackey, asking if he has been neglecting the education of the newcomers at the mansion. The butler swallows hard and lowers his head, lacking the courage to give an answer. At that moment, the MC grips the hilt of his sword tightly. He pulls the blade slightly from the scabbard, stating loud and clear that he received this last name from the head of the family himself. Using the weapon's metallic reflection to intimidate, the warrior asks if the snob has any objections to the Marquis's decision. Without holding back, the kid points to himself and declares that one day he will become the Lord and make everyone there bow before him. The veteran's wife is left completely speechless at such absurd insolence. The heir, meanwhile, clenches his jaw, shooting a murderous glare at the rookie. In the background, old Darius lets out a muffled chuckle, thoroughly enjoying his new recruit's guts. The servants around them start whispering, shocked at the idea of a commoner wanting to become the head of the territory. The maids wonder what kind of insanity that slave is spouting in the hall. To cut through the chatter, the Countess clears her throat, grabbing everyone's attention. The battalion of servants freezes instantly, feeling the atmosphere turn overwhelmingly heavy. Far from intimidated, the MC keeps a mocking little smirk on his face. The shrew lets out a sigh laced with pure contempt. Surrounded by a dark aura, the aristocrat declares that a lowly slave shouldn't open his mouth like that. In a split second, the mansion's guards draw their spears and swords, ready to attack. Under the order of capture, a whole squad advances on the warrior, aiming their weapons his way. But before any blood stains the carpet, the Marquis raises his voice, telling everyone to stop immediately. The soldiers halt their advance just inches away from the target. Taking control of the situation, the noble warns that everything the young man said is true, and that depending on his capabilities, he is genuinely considering handing the lord title over to him. The preppy son screams for his dad in sheer panic, refusing to believe what he just heard. Completely losing his cool, the spoiled brat demands to know what kind of madness the old man is saying in front of all the staff. The patriarch maintains a rigid and severe look, backing up every word of his controversial decision. Suddenly, the Countess flashes a malicious smile and says that if that is the Lord's will, she will no longer oppose it. With her eyes closed, the Viper sets the stage to unleash her poison with a tiny catch. She argues that there are hundreds of servants on the estate who work their fingers to the bone. And even with all that sacrifice, only a tiny handful have ever had the honor of receiving the family name. Some servants swallow hard as they listen to their boss's calculating speech. The shrew starts walking toward her husband again, letting her heels echo against the marble floor. Keeping up her fake act, she states that the Lord can't expect everyone to be happy with a total rookie popping out of nowhere and stealing the whole name. Spewing pure malice, the redhead suggests putting the boy to the test with a nice little trial. She proposes he must prove his strength so that everyone accepts his presence, but if he fails, he will be kicked out of the house in utter disgrace. The hero chuckles under his breath, knowing full well that this game is going exactly how he wanted. Seeing the smile, the woman's son puffs up with arrogance, asking if the trash is scared. The swordsman shoots back a sharp glare and points out that there's no point in him taking the test alone. With pure boldness, he suggests that everyone takes the same test, and whoever has the real skills becomes the successor instead of some loser who just got lucky to be born into a rich family. The preppy kid shakes from head to toe in pure fury, yelling that this is the first time in his life he's been subjected to such massive humiliation. Freed panics at the absurd idea of having to compete for the succession against mere servants and slaves. The spoiled brat breaks a cold sweat, shooting daggers at the new guy with his eyes. Unbelieving, the heir touches his mother's shoulder, looking for some backup against this madness. Katrina holds her unfazed pose and reminds her son that she's warned him about this several times. With a smug smile, the shrew advises the boy to keep his elegance and not stress out over a simple monkey. The Countess focuses her sharp gaze, assuring him that the nobility possesses the absolute power of magic. Because of that, the snob suggests they just sit back and watch from the top while the trash tries to prove himself. A little calmer now, the pampered boy agrees with the matriarch's plan. With the commotion over, Marquis Darius decides to go with the scheme and schedules the selection test for 1 month from then. Until test day arrives, the MC accepts he will have to grind like a low-level servant just like in his past life. But the warrior sees the bright side of the situation, realizing this will be the perfect opportunity to study his magical grimoires. Walking a bit ahead, Butler Cornell suddenly stops, catching the young man's attention. The lackey turns his head sideways and comments that the rookie seems to know exactly how to please the head of the family. Looking at the traveler, the veteran explains that the Marquis holds noble ideals, and because of that, he is constantly being watched closely by other aristocrats. The swordsman listens as the lackey reveals that the slave guild reported the human merchandise came straight from a remote village. Adjusting his glasses stylishly, the butler insinuates that it's too much of a coincidence for someone so ideal to show up exactly when the boss is struggling to pick a successor. The kid follows the reasoning, seeing right where the lackey is going with this. In a swift move, Cornell points a silver knife right at the MC's throat, asking if this isn't just a little too convenient. Without showing a single drop of fear, the hero admits there is some logic to that suspicion. The veteran frowns, waiting for the rest of the explanation. Keeping his cool, the fake commoner argues that the guild guys wouldn't be the type to set up a fight without thinking twice. The butler recalls the beef with Viscount Slaith and mentions that the merchants evaluated the recruit's strength at an intermediate level. However, the Countess's henchmen noticed that his moves in the arena were clearly at an advanced or even higher tier. In that world, most people focus solely on magic, leaving swordsmanship at a very basic level. But special organizations, like the feared Divine Guard, require advanced proficiency with a sword. Deep in thought, the man with glasses wonders if he was fed false information. Finding it amusing, the time traveler asks if the organization would really leave him alone after he defied noble orders. The swordsman concludes that this whole act only serves to create an excuse and clear any suspicion of espionage in the territory. The lackey blinks in confusion, not understanding where the conversation is headed. Straight to the point, the MC explains that a spy's goal is to infiltrate the enemy's inner circle and find their weaknesses. Reaching out his hand, the warrior says that if he were really a mole, he'd do things differently. The fake Colin points his finger right in the veteran's face and claims he would aim straight for his position. The ponytail lackey is taken aback by the kid's sheer audacity. With a confident smile, the traveler explains that taking over the head butler job would make uncovering the family's dirty laundry a whole lot easier. The older servant frowns, absorbing the impact of that brutal logic. Taking advantage of the opening, the hero proposes a deal where he'll use his new role to hunt down the other noble spies on the estate. In exchange for this cleanup, the kid only demands the lackey's cooperation, who quickly realizes the high risk and high reward of the offer. The veteran analyzes the situation, understanding that if anything happens to the Marquis, it won't matter if the brat becomes a successor. Despite finding the deal almost too good to be true, the man with glasses suspects the rookie has some other evil scheme in mind. But deciding to play the game, the butler turns around and tells the kid to follow him to his quarters. The swordsman flashes a victorious smirk, replying that he got the message loud and clear. The pair continues walking peacefully around the lavish property. Along the way, the lackey mentions the young man can pick anywhere he wants to stay. He explains that the servants in that house are split into 3 classes, set by Countess Katrina herself. The high-class ones serve the leaders, the middle-class ones live in the main mansion, and the lowest ones are isolated and forbidden from getting near the big house. Reaching the back courtyard, the butler points out that the rookie's main chores will be taking out the trash, chopping wood, and tending to the horses. Turning his back to leave, the veteran gives one final heads up about the customs of that place. The golden rule laid down by the snob demands absolute submission to the older servants. The moment the shed door opens, the kid comes face to face with a group of mean-looking foremen. The brutes chuckle maliciously, seeing fresh meat step onto their turf. The head lackey simply keeps walking through the yard, confirming the message was delivered. With a dark smile, the henchman vanishes down the hall, leaving the problem in the rookie's hands. Left alone, the time traveler repeats the absolute submission rule, finding the whole situation quite pathetic. Keeping up a peaceful act, he approaches the crew and introduces himself in a friendly manner. With a hand on his chest and a nice fake smile, the warrior claims to be excited to work with everyone there. The big guys burst out laughing, mocking the kid for having the guts to use the demon lord's name. The group's leader makes fun of him, calling the fake commoner the future lord of the family. Stepping right up close, the bearded foreman comments that the rumor about the fight in the main hall has already spread through all the staff. Cracking their knuckles, the thugs promise to teach him the hard way how to greet his superiors at camp. To show they aren't messing around, one of them smashes a glass bottle, scattering shards on the ground. The thug brandishes the broken bottle and orders the rookie to get on his knees and slap his own face until the gang is satisfied. The rest of the brutes surround the kid, grabbing his shoulder to guarantee the punishment. The aggressor keeps pushing the threat, laughing and telling the kid to hurry up and take his medicine. Wasting no time, the MC grabs the bully's arm and in a sudden motion, snaps the guy's limb right in front of everyone. The headband-wearing foreman's eyes pop out, completely shocked by the unexpected violence. Following up the strike, the swordsman lands a powerful kick squarely on the thug's chest, sending his body flying. The aggressor sails through the air, crashing into a pile of wooden crates. Prepping his hand, the time traveler warns that since they're trading blows, he isn't going to hold back his strength. In the blink of an eye, he lands a devastating slap on the redhead's face, scattering teeth through the air. Repeating his super polite introductory speech, the hero hands out colossal smacks, knocking the foreman down one by one. The last 2 thugs left standing tremble with rage as they watch their buddies get demolished. In an act of pure desperation, the bearded guy picks up a heavy bench and yells to take the scumbag out. The warrior simply glares at the idiots with a cold, calculating look. With a hand on his hip, the fake commoner slightly draws his sword, prepping the final strike. Using just the weapon's pommel, he delivers a brutal thrust to the big guy's gut, ending the warm welcome once and for all. Without giving him time to breathe, the swordsman smashes a wooden stool straight into the bearded guy's face, sending a spray flying everywhere. Right after that, he leaps with all his might and drives the rest of the furniture into the head of another thug trying to get close. The impact is so brutal, the attacker can barely process the pain while his teeth threaten to shatter. The force of the blow throws the brute backward, leaving him completely knocked out on the courtyard dirt. Seeing his comrades destroyed, the last remaining bully backs away, cursing his own luck. But before he can run, the warrior grabs him by his shirt collar and pins him against the wall with his blade already drawn. Exuding a terrifying purple aura, the hero stares at the human garbage and asks in a cold tone if he's satisfied with their little game yet. Shaking from head to toe and with a bleeding nose, the foreman cries, confirming he's taken enough of a beating. Satisfied with the answer, the time traveler lets the coward go and casually turns his back, resting his sword on his shoulder. However, the humiliation ignites the thug's fury, who whispers curses behind the rookie's back. In a treacherous move, the attacker grabs the neck of the broken bottle that was on the ground. Blinded by hate, the bully charges at full speed, yelling for the scumbag to perish, while the fake Colin catches the movement out of the corner of his eye. The MC lets out an exhausted sigh, realizing that this bunch really is beyond saving. In a quick and lethal spin, the warrior's blade slices through the air, severing the attacker's arm in the blink of an eye. The thug's hand, still clutching the bottle, hits the ground in a bloody mess as a muffled groan echoes across the yard. The attacker screams in agony, gripping his spraying stump, while the swordsman calmly lowers his weapon. With a look of contempt, the young man sarcastically asks if the thug is finally satisfied now. Evaluating the situation, the MC figures he managed to earn Butler Cornell's trust for now, but knows any mistake could be fatal. Determined to get stronger, his eyes glow blue as he mentally summons his grimoire. The magic book floats in front of him, and the hero concludes he urgently needs to study magic to truly protect himself. He remembers how Countess Katrina, upon marrying the Marquis, swapped out almost all the servants for people loyal to her, creating an oppressive system that ruined the couple's relationship. Given that, Cornell was the key piece chosen by the Lord to keep his wife in check, since the noble didn't have enough influence to kick her allies out. The experienced, spectacled lackey also holds a special privilege, being crucial in choosing the family's future successor. The problem is that in the original timeline, this butler's mysterious passing was the spark that set off the tragedy. With the path clear, the dangerous Katrina took full control and forced the appointment of her spoiled son Freed as heir. Flipping through the glowing pages, the time traveler reflects that if the veteran had survived, history would be different, and admits that only having beginner-level magic resistance leaves him vulnerable. Blue energy starts gathering in his hand, indicating his top priority now is to master spells focused on attack and defense. Suddenly, the artifact's pages radiate an intense light that shoots straight into the boy's body. The fake commoner grits his teeth as he feels all that ancient knowledge violently flowing into his mind. A piercing pain takes over his muscles, as if thousands of ants were biting him and molten magma was running through his bones. Amidst this agonizing trance, a dark, armored silhouette appears in his mind, calling the demon lord's name. The demonic apparition raises a blade of black energy, echoing chilling orders to destroy, corrupt, and subjugate everything. Sweating cold, the swordsman wonders if he's already hit his limit and if this absurd suffering is the true price for mastering magic. He remembers the words of a mage from the past who said that training spells was a simple thing, requiring only to close one's eyes and feel the flow of mana. Grabbing his own arm, the warrior gives an ironic smile, thinking about how easy the nobles' lives are, and wonders if this is the infamous bloodline barrier. Far from giving up, an insane smile creeps across the MC's face, who claims to be getting hyped up by the challenge. Electric sparks and mana currents explode from his fingers as he tries to tame that raw power. Wrapped in dark blue lightning, the hero promises himself he will conquer the grimoire no matter what it takes. With a fixed and bright gaze, he focuses all his willpower to break the rules of that unfair world. Outside the shed, a blue flash lights up the early morning, followed by a deafening shout of pure triumph that echoes off the walls. Day breaks over the territory, and the camp's activities begin with the servants washing heavy clothes in wooden tubs. The foreman with the bandaged head hears a strange noise and gets his work buddy's attention. Hearing the sound of approaching boots, the thug instantly recognizes who is coming and warns them it's the damn rookie. The fake commoner steps out of the shed, stretching and yawning, sarcastically commenting that he expected to be stabbed in his sleep by his friendly seniors. Keeping up the mockery, the traveler remarks that a night ambush wouldn't have made the slightest bit of difference against him anyway. Right after, the system screen pops up floating, confirming he acquired beginner-level magic specializing in the ice element. A smile of pure satisfaction forms on the young man's face as he celebrates the success of his extreme training. Walking calmly through the yard, the warrior crosses his arms behind his head and grumbles that he needs to eat something to get his energy back. In another part of town, the peaceful vibe is interrupted by shouts ordering the commoners to clear the way on the main street. The local residents immediately bow their heads and fearfully greet the arrival of the dreaded Divine Guard. Flaunting arrogance. A soldier kicks a citizen while the eye-patch-wearing vice captain demands absolute submission, threatening to eliminate anyone who doesn't bow. Amid the chaos, a young peasant carries a heavy bucket of water, totally distracted by his work. Unaware of the approaching tyrants, the kid accidentally bumps slightly into the military patrol. In response, the cowardly guard delivers a brutal kick to the worker's chest, sending him and the bucket flying, while yelling at him not to stand in the way like an idiot. To make matters worse, the spilled water splashes right onto the officer's nicely polished boots. The one-eyed man stops walking immediately, showing deep irritation over the mess on his shoe. A subordinate soldier raises his hand, shouting and accusing the commoner of dirtying the vice captain's boots, but the superior raises a finger, telling his lackey to calm down. Desperate, the peasant throws himself face down on the ground, begging for forgiveness and swearing it was just an accident. Pretending to be understanding, the one-eyed officer crouches near the kid, saying that if he didn't see where he was walking, then it wasn't entirely his fault. The worker sighs in relief, thanking the military man for his supposed kindness, who then starts laughing like a psycho. The vice captain's smile vanishes quickly as he whispers that the situation requires an appropriate punishment. In an act of pure cruelty, the sadist grabs the peasant's face, digging his fingers near the guy's eyes, and warns that if his vision is no good for seeing where he's going, then he doesn't need it. A scream of agony tears through the street as blood gushes out, painting the ground red, confirming the terrible mutilation. Completely blinded and bleeding, the poor worker drags himself across the stones while the guards watch the scene, only feeling sorry for the mess. Noticing the residents' shock, the subordinate soldier turns his head, barking and asking what that riffraff is staring at. Drawing their weapons, the military men order everyone to get on their knees immediately, making the terrified crowd obey. Walking around there, without giving a care about the chaos, our MC thinks about the terrible quality of the food given to low-class servants. Suddenly, the blonde thug who got his hand sliced off in the yard shows up in the crowd and catches his older brother's attention. The coward points his bandaged stump and accuses the time traveler of being the lunatic who took his arm, begging the vice captain to watch out for the rookie. The officer's gaze locks onto the kids, radiating silent hostility. Pointing his blood-stained finger threateningly, the executioner tells the brat to stop walking and come to him. Turning his head calmly, the fake Colin realizes the tyrants are related to the foreman and asks cynically if the military man also wants to lose his hands. Licking the peasant's blood off his fingers, the officer bursts out laughing and warns that the Divine Guard isn't soft, like the mansion's nobles. Drawing his sharp blade, the one-eyed guy invokes the law of an eye for an eye, ordering the young man to rip his own arm off or face the wrath of the squad. Gripping his sword hilt tightly, the swordsman coldly replies that in that case, he will give the idiots a choice too. Raising his training blade, the MC stares at the guards and asks with total coldness if they'd rather lose an arm or their heads. The one-eyed officer raises his hand to stop his subordinate's advance, justifying that the Divine Guard hasn't stooped so low as to brawl in the street with a random slave. With an air of superiority, he announces he will let someone else handle that insolent trash. A hint of surprise crosses the fake commoner's face upon hearing that unexpected declaration. Right then, a shirtless, muscle-bound guy named Dak appears, who apparently is a mid-level servant and former champion of the slave arena. Looking at the warrior, the hero reflects to himself, finding it ironic that they ended up meeting exactly in a place like this. It turns out that in the original timeline, the two actually fought side by side against the enemy forces, planning war tactics together like true brothers in arms amidst the chaos of destruction. They even celebrated victory sitting on the bodies of giant monsters they had just taken down. Back in the present, the swordsman checks out his old buddy, noticing the bruises on his body and realizes he was taking a beating from those cowardly guards until a second ago. Unfazed, the time traveler asks if the arena champion is really going to bow his head and fight in place of those tyrants. Settling into a combat stance, Dak replies robotically that the rules of this place demand the lower-ranked obey their superiors, and whoever breaks that law must be punished. Taking the situation seriously, the fake Colin asks if the big guy isn't even allowed to complain. Despite being used like a mere hunting dog, the ex-gladiator swallows hard, showing clear hesitation in his eyes, as if he were trapped in a snare he never chose. Noticing his opponent's internal conflict, the MC lets out a nasal chuckle, finding that pathetic submissiveness amusing. Without warning, the muscular servant lunges forward, slicing the air with his sword straight toward the rookie. The peasants around them watch the scene, totally terrified by the breakout of violence. Watching from a distance, the one-eyed officer gives a wicked smile, commenting on how convenient rules like those are. At an absurd speed, the hero blocks the champion's attack while dashing forward, pressing the tip of his blade against the patrol leader's neck and warning him that he's going to smash those rules to pieces. The subordinate guards go into total panic, unable to process the exact moment the kid even moved. Shocked that his attack missed, Dak turns his head, realizing he was left behind in the blink of an eye. Shaken, the former gladiator notices his weapon was snatched from his own hands with humiliating ease. With the cold steel against his throat, the one-eyed officer breaks a cold sweat and stutters, asking if the kid knows who he is messing with. Trying to keep his act together, the coward claims he was personally chosen by Lord Freed and warns that defying him means picking a fight with all of the Hall family elite. Far from being intimidated by the names of spoiled nobles, the swordsman just shoots a deadly look at the loudmouth while the other soldiers uselessly point their weapons. In a fluid motion, the time traveler pulls his sword back, prepping his stance to teach a permanent lesson to the sadist. Mistaking the pullback for submission, the guard leader starts smiling again, thinking the rookie finally grasped the danger and gave up on attacking. Full of himself, he adjusts his cape and orders his men to get ready, saying he's going to beat that trash until there's nothing left. His lackeys smile wickedly, already gripping their swords, ready to beat the defenseless prisoner. Suddenly, the sound of tearing flesh echoes through the alley as a puddle of blood gushes out, surprising everyone when the blades strike Dak's back. The fake commoner widens his eyes, totally confused to see that the big guy deliberately jumped in front of the attack. Laughing like a maniac, the one-eyed guy states that he really did need to teach a lesson in obedience to that useless servant. As it happens, it was the soldiers themselves who plunged their swords into the ex-gladiator's back, making him fall to his knees, shaking in pain. Blood pours out, staining the cobblestones as one of the executioners calls the wounded man disposable trash. Pressing his boot against the fallen body, the military guy mocks him, saying the arena champion threw away a great chance to prove his worth. Shifting his attention back to the rookie, the soldier points his weapon, threatening to do the same if he keeps resisting. But the hero's answer comes as an explosive dash, leaving the guard jaw-dropped without even the time to blink. Fallen on the ground, the muscle-bound guy widens his eye, impressed by the killer aura given off by the swordsman. Showing zero mercy, the warrior delivers a brutal slash right across the aggressor's chest, splashing blood everywhere. Capitalizing on the moment of the attack, the one-eyed leader spots a perfect opening in the MC's defense. Laughing loudly, the officer raises his metal baton and attacks the kid from behind, yelling that an amateur should never turn their back on the enemy. The sound of clashing metal echoes as the treacherous blow is blocked with absolute precision. The tyrant's smile vanishes instantly, replaced by an expression of pure shock as he watches his strike fail miserably. With calculated movements, the time traveler used just his sword scabbard to block the assault without even needing to look back. Spinning his body in a flash, the fake Colin places the sharp blade back on the attacker's neck. coldly warning that next time he won't just use the scabbard, making the coward beg for his life, stuttering in terror. Drops of cold sweat run down the patrol leader's deformed face, who now feels the true weight of his doom. In a quick move, the hero spins his sword and delivers a violent strike, sending the coward's weapon flying away with a deafening crash. Still lying on the ground, the wounded servant watches the dark-haired kid act with a mix of shock and silent admiration. Twirling his wrist with skill, the MC tosses the sword back into the former arena champion's hands. The muscle-bound guy catches the blade in midair, while the one-eyed officer stumbles backward, screaming desperate orders for them not to commit any more crimes against him. Gripping the weapon's handle tightly, the former gladiator feels the sting of his injuries running down his arm. The swordsman looks down, evaluating the pathetic situation of the man who was once his great comrade in arms. With a voice full of authority, he warns the bullies that he will let this one slide out of respect for the injured big guy, but promises there will not be a second chance. Spooked by the warning, the soldiers gather their wounded and stumble away in retreat, while the hero tells them to get out of his sight. As soon as the trash clears out, the time traveler openly asks why someone so strong was taking a beating from such weak losers without even trying to fight back. Annoyed by the question, the servant shouts that by challenging the vice captain, the rookie signed his own ticket to the afterlife, and therefore he has no obligation to explain anything to a goner. With a harsh gesture, the muscular guy tosses the training sword back into the hands of his supposed savior. Catching the weapon midair, the fake commoner hears his colleague grumble that he can keep that piece of metal since it only attracts bad luck. Without saying another word, the injured man turns his back and limps away, leaving the boy standing in the middle of the empty street. Far from there, the memory of the humiliation surfaces, showing the officer dunking the servant's head into a barrel of water, blaming him for being an embarrassment on the street. Water rushes into the poor guy's nose and mouth as he is forcefully held under, fighting for air. Pulled to the surface, the former arena champion coughs uncontrollably, spitting out water and apologizing to his attacker. In response, the one-eyed man delivers a cowardly kick, knocking the big guy to the stone floor and telling him to get out of his sight immediately. Watching the scene, one of the lackeys steps up and asks the leader if they are really going to let the humiliation caused by that rookie slide so easily. A wicked smile takes over the officer's face as he orders them to spread the word that the time traveler declared war on the Divine Guard, aiming to isolate him from everyone in the camp. Hearing the dirty plot, the muscular man just lowers his head, bitter about his own helplessness against the system. Meanwhile, the swordsman walks calmly down the street, still trying to understand why such a valuable warrior gave up on fighting. The scenery changes to an exquisite environment where a sharp knife slices a juicy piece of roasted meat. A lavish table filled with a delicious banquet is served in a luxurious hall, showing the exorbitant wealth of that place. It was the dining hall for the Hall family's elite servants, where fancy butlers and maids prayed, thanking the heavens for the privileges they received. The maids laugh while they eat, gossiping about dreams where the madam promoted them to even higher positions in the mansion's hierarchy. The contrast is immediate when the scene cuts to the dirt camp, where the lower-class servants gather around rusty pots. Swallowing a thin, gross-looking stew, a scrawny worker repeats the same brainwashed prayer, giving thanks for the honor of being a servant. The cook hands out the rations roughly, tossing the oatmeal into the cracked bowls of an endless line of exhausted peasants. Finally reaching the food area, our MC steps up to the pot, excited to grab his portion of that questionable meal. The MC steps up all hyped to get his food, while the other guys in the dining area start whispering about him being there. Noticing the weird looks, he is completely clueless as to why everyone is staring at him like that. With that in mind, the time traveler quickly grabs a full bowl to finally fill his stomach. But the joy is short-lived as one of the cooks smacks his hand hard, knocking the food to the ground, and warns him that those who do not work do not get to eat. Confused by the unprovoked hostility, the fake commoner looks back, observing the crowd gathering around. Having zero patience to deal with that cheap provocation, the swordsman just clicks his tongue and walks away with his hands in his pockets. The regular servants watch the scene in disbelief and whisper among themselves about the crazy direction the rookie is heading. It turns out he is walking straight to the noble area of the courtyard, an exclusive spot where only elite servants are allowed to have their meals. Totally unfazed by the rules of the place, the hero says, "Excuse me," and tells the fancy staff to get out of his way. Outraged by the dirty boy's nerve, one of the maids demands that someone do something about that insolent servant. At that moment, an authoritative figure asks what exactly the newcomer thinks he is doing in that restricted area. Completely ignoring the question, the dark-haired boy takes a massive bite out of a giant sweetbread. With his mouth full and holding several meat skewers, he listens to the butler Cornell calmly warn him that this dining hall is not for people of his kind. Right after, one of the fancy lackeys steps up furiously, asking the superior to punish that rookie to make an example out of him. The leader of the servants just keeps his cold gaze on the boy, silently calculating his next move. To everyone's surprise, the head of the staff decides to let it slide, stating that mistakes are bound to happen for newcomers, and tells the boy to follow him. As the two walk away to the luxurious hallways, the other employees are left speechless, unable to believe that was the only punishment. During the walk to the main mansion, the black-haired lackey asks if the fake commoner has already forgotten the rule of absolute obedience to superiors. In a laid-back tone, the MC denies the accusation, trying to play off his total lack of manners and etiquette. Still chewing his stolen meal, he justifies himself by saying that Master Darius himself promised rewards based on skills, and he definitely has the strength to deserve some decent grub. In the middle of the conversation, Cornell reveals he accepted the proposal made earlier and promises to help the time traveler with his daily routine from that moment on. Obviously, this help would not come for free, and the butler quickly sets the stage to collect his part of the deal. The mission given by Marquis Darius echoes in his memory, where the Lord clearly ordered them to find the spy hidden within their own home. Suddenly, the sound of a hunting horn echoes through the courtyard, making the lackey wonder why the master is heading to the field so early. Soon he explains that there have been reports of anomalies in the nearby gloomy forest, and the Lord plans to investigate everything during this expedition. Swallowing another piece of food, the swordsman listens carefully to the information, while formulating a plan in his mind. With a confident smile on his face, the boy repeats the name of the place, already showing a lot of interest in that mystery. The scene cuts to the inside of the dense dark forest, where a black deer with creepy red eyes peacefully chews on the vegetation. The silence of nature is broken by the hissing sound of arrows cutting through the air at high speed. With pinpoint accuracy, the projectiles hit the shadowy animal's neck, taking the creature down instantly. Hidden among the leaves, the fake Colin lowers his bow with a satisfied smile for hitting the target dead center. Slowly, he approaches the fallen game, celebrating a successful hunt in the middle of that thick brush. Without wasting time, the warrior kneels next to the animal and uses his dagger to easily open up the catch. Using the magic grimoire skills, the hero's eyes glow blue as he detects something valuable hidden inside the monster. He pulls out a glowing core from the meat, remembering that these items usually become jewelry, but the magic book teaches how to use them to craft enhancement potions. Analyzing the crystal with the grimoire system, he discovers that the properties change depending on the monster, noting that this one is just a very low-level core. Even though it is a lower-quality material, the time traveler accepts it, knowing the magic stone still works perfectly for making mana potions. The boy's mind flashes back to his conversation with Cornell, where the lackey warned that access to that area was strictly for elite knights and authorized personnel after the incidents. At that moment, the bold MC pointed to one of the guards, suggesting he could enter the forest if he was accompanied by one of them. Back in the present, his train of thought is interrupted by a shout grabbing his attention while he is still holding the messy dagger. The blonde soldier who came with him arrives ranting and out of breath, complaining that the boy ran out of sight and reminding him that low-class servants are forbidden from hunting. Caught red-handed, the dark-eyed boy turns his face away, playing it off with zero shame. In a quick and unexpected move, the swordsman steps up and pulls the sword strapped to the military man's waist, asking to borrow it for a second. Confused by how fast it happened, the guard stands frozen while the rookie is already wielding the long blade. His companion's eyes widen, afraid the problematic captive is going to do something crazy right there in the woods. Instead of attacking his partner, the hero simply sinks the borrowed weapon deep into the body of the newly hunted monster. With a sly smile, he tells the shocked soldier that from now on, this catch officially belongs to the Divine Guard. Annoyed by the cheap trick, The fancy military man snatches the sword back, grumbling that this ridiculous logic would never fly with the top brass of the house. After sheathing the weapon, the guy complains about his terrible luck of being forced to pair up with a useless lackey. While cleaning the mess off the blade, the knight wonders out loud what on earth was going through the butler Cornell's head when he put those patrol teams together. Trying to assert dominance, the hothead shows off a luxurious dagger, claiming it is undeniable proof that he received a direct mission from the head of the staff. The elite soldier explains that the order is to investigate the territory and secure supplies for the family's lord, while the MC listens to it all looking completely unconvinced. Still whining about his bad luck, the knight downs a blue flask to recover his energy from the hike. After that refreshing gulp, the military man takes a deep breath, deciding it is best to just focus on the job and get the mission over with. The scene shifts to show a massive pile of raw meat laid out on the stone floor in a reverent display. Standing there with an arrogant posture, the guard daydreams, believing this is the perfect chance to prove his worth and officially join the upper ranks. However, the young soldier's ambitious daydream is abruptly cut short when he notices a weird sound coming from right next to him. Turning his head, he finds the fake commoner chilling, roasting the whole catch on a makeshift campfire and inviting him to join the feast. Completely outraged, the officer yells, asking what the heck is going on there, and the hero replies sarcastically that he is just throwing a nice little barbecue. Panicking, his partner grabs the boy's shoulder, screaming that those supplies belong to Marquis Darius and absolutely cannot be eaten by them. The time traveler already has his mouth full of roast meat and calmly argues that one little piece will not be missed from that whole mountain of hoarded food. Showing off his survivor's generosity, the MC shoves a huge chunk of meat right into the panting soldier's face. With the meal in hand against his will, the fancy military man refuses the offer, reminding him that the rookie stole the vice captain's weapon and will face severe punishment back at camp later. Taking a step forward with a teasing smile, the swordsman pokes the wound, bringing up that the cruel rules of that place only let them eat once every 3 days. Totally awkward, the guy swallows hard hearing the boy's manipulative point, claiming he will also get in trouble for losing his sword and will probably end up starving too. Shamelessly drooling over the juicy cut, the guard hears the final trump card. A warrior could never protect the main family on an empty stomach. In a playful tone, the fake Colin promises he will not tell a single soul about this little slip-up in the strict, local diet. Defeated by hunger and basic instincts, the soldier finally gives in and takes a massive bite out of that amazing meat. With his mouth full while still kneeling on the ground, the blonde guy tries to justify it by saying he is eating in the Lord's name, while the hero just watches, feeling bad for the starving dude. With his buddy's stomach full, the MC uses the moment of peace to ask why someone with so many skills bows down to washed-up officers. After another fierce bite of his meal, the partner grumbles that having strength does not change the harsh reality they live in one bit. He fiercely defends the idea that nobles are chosen by the heavens, blindly believing that all his hard work will be divinely rewarded someday. In his mind, the young man dreams of reincarnating as a sacred chosen one, revealing he endured all that hell just to make his little sister, who lives far away, proud. Overcome with emotion and sudden anger, the soldier raises his voice, accusing the time traveler of trying to ruin years of sacrifice with his foolish, rebellious ideologies. Gritting his teeth in pure frustration, the elite soldier concludes that the Lord's talk of meritocracy does not really matter, since servants were born just to work hard until the end of their days without ever questioning the system. With the soldier's naive view in mind, the hero repeats the term divine power in his head with a touch of irony. With a smug smile on his face, the boy shatters his colleague's illusion, assuring him that it is all just the use of a little magic. Annoyed by the captive's nerve, Dak challenges him to prove it by learning 1 or 2 spells since he likes to talk so much. Glaring seriously at the military man, the fake Colin counters the taunt, asking what would happen if he offered magic lessons right then and there. Completely stunned by the crazy proposal, the guard's eyes widen, unable to process the information. Looking up at the boy from below, the elite soldier asks in disbelief if a simple servant actually has the ability to use magic. The chat is abruptly cut off by a screeching sound echoing through the woods, scaring a flock of birds away. They both turn their heads toward the sound as the MC analyzes the situation with concern. Amidst the thick brush, A man is fiercely bitten on the shoulder by a glowing beast, causing heavy damage. Just up ahead, a squad of Imperial guards is fighting desperately against the pack of blue flame wolves, while leader Glenn orders them to hold the defensive line. Covered in cold sweat from the disadvantage, the bearded veteran curses at the extreme difficulty of that battle. Chaos breaks out in the makeshift camp when another soldier is knocked down by a monster and screams in agony. Pinned to the ground, another member of the guard uses his shield with all his might to keep the glowing fangs away from his neck. In a surprise attack cutting through the darkness, the time traveler's figure appears, delivering a clean strike that knocks the creature off the fallen soldier. Startled by the sudden movement, one of the recruits yells Captain Glenn's name, drawing his attention to the unexpected rescue. Before the leader could figure out what was happening, the young soldier frantically warns him about a flaming beast leaping right behind the veteran. Facing a fatal blow, Glenn's eyes widen without enough time to raise his sword. Fast as the wind, arrows pierce the blue wolf's neck, taking the creature down before it reaches its target. Right after the life-saving shot, the hero's feet touch the dirt ground as he gets into position to keep fighting. Keeping pace with the boy, Dak lands right behind him holding his bow and asking if the squad is okay. With his face completely locked into battle mode, the swordsman analyzes the magical beasts around him, calculating his next move. Noticing the mystic glow of the enemies, he realizes that the blue flames, meat, bones, and pelts of those creatures are worth a fortune on the market. Pulling the bowstring tight, the MC declares that he is not letting a single one of those monsters get away. With impressive speed, the boy dashes forward in a burst, kicking up dust wherever he goes. Ducking under the flaming claws, he slides, dodging the pack's coordinated attacks with total ease. Shocked by the reckless move, veteran Glenn watches the boy dive straight into the middle of the predators. Always wearing a confident smile, the fake slave mocks the wolves' weakness, noting they are useless at hunting without the numbers advantage. Jumping high to escape the trap, the time traveler fires a barrage of arrows that pierces multiple enemies at once. To finish off the aerial combo, he lands smoothly, bending his knees to absorb the impact. Slowly raising his head, the hero's piercing eyes search for the next target amidst the glowing takedowns. Another enraged beast charges at the boy, who notices the monster's persistence even after seeing their packmates go down. After easily dodging the rush, he finds it annoying that the beasts cannot sense the massive power gap between them. With a quick spin of his body, the swordsman lands a devastating kick on the magic wolf's ribs, sending the animal flying. Blown away by the display of raw power, the Imperial guards let out gasps of pure surprise at the fight. The beatdown continues mercilessly as another glowing creature is hit square in the chest by a spot-on projectile in midair. Standing in a relaxed pose with his bow in hand, the MC concludes that, at the end of the day, they are just mindless animals. Refusing to back down, the rest of the flaming pack rushes toward the hero, baring their teeth. With the borrowed blade in hand, he charges, slashing the wolves with a messy display of precision. Up close to the carnage, Glenn is stunned to see the rookie effortlessly take down the monsters his squad could not even scratch. With his sharp peripheral vision, the warrior spots a new threat closing in fast from the flank. Using his backward momentum, the boy leaps gracefully, creating a safe distance from the incoming danger. He lands smoothly while the mystic beast runs right past the spot where he was standing a second ago. One of the biggest wolves in the pack bares its fangs with a look of pure ferocity, ready for the final strike. Without skipping a beat in the fight, the fake Colin shoots arrows infused with his own aura, intercepting the frontal attack. Using the trees to launch himself, the boy jumps over the monster and fires from above, pinning the beast straight to the dirt. Using the momentum of the move, the hero spins in the air, prepping the finishing blow to end the battle. Like a literal meteor falling from the sky, he crushes the skull of one of the blue wolves with a stomp wrapped in pure magic energy. Right after, the MC's longsword slices through another beast as he elegantly weaves through the attacks. The sound of steel slicing the wind passes right by the boy's face, who stays totally calm without even blinking. At the peak of the relentless hunt, the time traveler strikes the last monster's head, leaving a huge mess over its glowing fur. Glancing over his shoulder, he advises his patrol partner not to let his guard down yet in a warning tone. His expression shifting to a friendly smile, the swordsman casually compliments his buddy's aim. With his bow lowered and a heavy sigh, Dak takes the compliment, trying to catch his breath after the massive adrenaline rush. Near the duo, the squad leader praises the impressive skills of both warriors and asks straight up which nobles they serve. Pretty nervous around the imperial elite, the blonde soldier introduces himself as a backup and introduces Colin as a humble servant, explaining they came as support under strict orders from Butler Cornell. Hearing the unexpected explanation, Glenn and his subordinates, Sarah and Marvin, exchange looks of total disbelief that they are being rescued by lower-class individuals. Annoyed by the awkward situation, one of the guards asks what the butler was thinking sending the old lady's lackeys out there, while another mutters that being saved by them is an eternal disgrace. Amid the confusion over the terms used by the veterans, Dak mumbles the derogatory nickname, totally clueless about the internal politics of the main house. Away from the noble's tension, the MC inspects a glowing purple core in his hand, confirming it is mid-level and more than enough for his needs. Kneeling next to the predator's fresh remains, he mentally plans out how to craft the healing meds, strictly following the detailed steps in the magic grimoire. The hero's silent planning is interrupted by a disrespectful shout, calling him a brat with disgust. Pointing the tip of his sword as a threat, Soldier Marvin demands to know who gave the servant permission to even touch the monster's valuable remains. Trying to cool down the upcoming clash, Glenn asks his subordinate to hold on a second and suggests leaving the scraps to the duo since the Marquis's main mission is the absolute priority for their group. Rolling the magic stone lightly between his fingers, the MC throws a mocking look, asking if Brat isn't too ungrateful of a nickname for the guy who just saved their worthless hides. Taking a direct hit to his aristocratic pride, Marvin's face twists into a look of uncontrollable rage with bulging veins. Amidst the yelling demanding the boy not get cocky, the hothead charges in to attack, while his own teammates grab his arms, begging him to chill out at the camp. Without moving a single muscle to defend himself, the fake Colin watches the tantrum with cold calculation, recognizing the problematic military guy's name immediately. A painful memory from his past life pops into his head, showing Marquis Darius standing tall with his back turned in front of an old painting, with Cornell beside him in a dark room. The memory focuses on the gloomy painting honoring the fallen Glenn, Marvin, and Sarah, confirming just how deeply important that trio was to the family. The time traveler remembers that those three warriors were the Lord's most trusted royal guard, and their tragic loss while investigating this very same dark forest was the exact trigger for Darius losing power in the distant future. Back in the present and aware of the mess happening right in front of him, the hero reflects on the irony of fate, mentally swearing that now he won't let a single one of them face their demise. Acting as a makeshift human shield to protect his partner, Dak apologizes, stuttering heavily, and explains that the rookie isn't familiar with the strict rules of the territory's military hierarchy. Glaring with deep hatred and disgust, Soldier Sarah tells the old witch's dogs to shut their mouths right now and stop meddling in elite business. Getting more and more lost in that crossfire of venomous noble insults, the young backup sweats cold, internally wondering what the offense even means. Even while held back by his exhausted teammates, Marvin steps closer heavily, bitterly guessing that this bold boy must be the same arrogant rookie who had the guts to challenge the Countess, claiming he would become the next lord of the family. Taking charge of the situation, Captain Glenn openly admits that the rookie possesses impressive strength. The veteran makes a point to warn him that the boy will deeply regret it if he doesn't drop those unworthy thoughts about leading the family. The fake Colin just listens to the lecture in silence, keeping his usual calm expression. Ready to head out, the bearded man says thanks once again for the rescue and excuses himself, letting them know they have an important mission to finish. Right at that moment, a heavy tremor shakes the ground, cutting the group's goodbye short. Caught off guard by the sudden noise, everyone looks around while a spooked Marvin asks what the heck that is. The loud crash scares the birds out of the trees, revealing that something colossal is moving through the dark forest. From the shadows of the brush, heavy footsteps emerge, accompanied by an intense and threatening blue glow. Faced with that overwhelming presence, the three elite guards freeze completely in shock. A gigantic magic beast leading the pack comes into view, making a panicked Sarah identify the monster as a blue king. With a deafening roar, the flaming leader and its subordinates surround the humans, giving off an overwhelming pressure. The massive creature's bloodthirsty red eyes lock straight onto its prey. Wasting no time, the entire pack charges at the soldiers in a fast and coordinated attack. Seeing their end approaching so fast, the Marquis's squad panics, realizing how outmatched they are. The Blue King takes the lead with a brutal lunge that could tear anyone there to shreds. With no time to react to the fatal strike, Glenn just closes his eyes, gritting his teeth and bracing for the worst. But opening his eyes moments later, the captain is stunned and wonders who that boy really is. The MC appears right in front of the veteran, blocking the beast's giant claws with his sword while apologizing for stepping in. With a confident smile on his face, the time traveler gloats, reminding them that he just saved their hides once again. Annoyed by the block, the Blue King roars fiercely, trying to crush its opponent. In response to the monster's pressure, the swordsman pulls his blade back, activating his combat technique. With a devastating upward swing, he unleashes the mountain-breaking skill, sending a wave of pure force at the beast. The colossal impact hits the magic wolf head-on, forcing the animal back. The hero lands gracefully on the ground. Admitting that the situation is a bit complicated, thanks to the brutal force of the strike, the giant creature slides backward, dragging its paws through the dirt. Far from backing down, the fake Colin gains momentum and dashes like lightning toward the enemy. Another exchange of blows goes down, scattering blue energy all over the battlefield. During the intense clash, the MC figures that his current body's limits are a major problem. Noticing the cracks on his basic blade, he concludes that taking down a monster of that tier using only swordsmanship is going to be pretty tough. Worried about the boy, Sarah and Glenn ask if he is okay, pointing out that this formidable wolf has already wiped out countless elite Imperial soldiers. With a vicious look, the magic creature eyes the group of humans, ready to continue the onslaught. The situation gets desperate as the knights are completely surrounded by the pack's blue fire. In total panic, a tearful Marvin asks what they should do since they could barely handle the lackeys, and now the leader showed up too. Always calm, the MC advises the group not to worry about the lesser monsters, leaving the captain confused. He breaks it down, explaining that the blue flames just follow direct orders without having a will of their own, and taking down the king will make the rest of the pack run away. Understanding the reckless strategy, the bearded veteran breaks out in a cold sweat, asking if they are really going to face the main monster. Dak jumps in quickly, stating that it's impossible to beat an enemy that wiped out the Imperials, especially with their swords completely worn out. The swordsman flashes a challenging smile, promising they will only know the outcome for sure if they try to fight. Spooked by his buddy's confidence, the muscular servant mutters that the kid has completely lost his mind. Like a true leader, Glenn agrees that fighting is their only chance at survival, but points out that crossing the wall of flames to reach the king will be a tough job. Without taking his eyes off the target, the boy states firmly that the captain won't need to put in all that effort. With a cold, calculating look in his eyes, he predicts that a perfect opening is going to show up very soon. To crank up the humans' despair, the entire pack howls at the sky, prepping their final charge. Marvin trembles in the face of that intimidating presence, while the squad leader yells for everyone to get ready to intercept the mass attack. Acting like the real commander of the team, the fake slave raises his hand and tells everyone to stay calm. Keeping his eyes locked on the threat, the young strategist instructs the guards to let the wolves get even closer. Annoyed by the nerve, Marvin asks since when the brat gets to give orders, but gets shut down by Glenn, who tells everyone to follow the boy's instructions to avoid infighting. The hot-headed soldier is left speechless. Seeing his own captain bow down to a servant's command, at the back of the formation, the hero asks Doc to join him in the charge, leaving the man totally surprised. To hype up his scared partner, he hits a soft spot, reminding the servant of his wish to become a big brother his sister can be proud of. Hearing his beloved family member's name, the former gladiator clenches his fists, his chest filling with brave determination. The peace doesn't last long as the bearded veteran screams at the top of his lungs that the enemies are finally here. The blue beasts crash violently against the human's defensive wall, causing a loud boom in the forest. Even under intense pressure from the magic claws, the MC demands they hold their ground because it's not the right time yet. The growls get louder while the boy keeps telling them to lure the pack closer and closer. When the Blue King steps up to deliver the final strike, the time traveler waits for the absolute perfect millisecond. The exact moment the trap closes, he yells the command, his powerful voice tearing through the air. With undeniable authority, the boy orders the captain to blind the enemies using the sacred shield skill. Right after the order, the bearded man projects a magic shield of pure light that blinds all the wolves around them. Not missing a beat in the fight, the makeshift commander tells Marvin to sweep the monsters away using his celestial slash. Channeling all his strength into the blade, the hot-headed soldier pulls off the area attack flawlessly. The violent impact of the energy brutally knocks back the pack's front line, clearing up space on the field. To wrap up the combo, the MC tells Soldier Sarah to clear the path with the Phantom Sword, demanding she doesn't mess up the mission. Multiple beams of slicing aura tear through the disoriented wolves, spilling magic across the area. Blown away by the flawless coordination, the captain wonders how the boy knows their specific skills when each of them uses a totally different weapon. Through the opening made by the squad, the swordsman calls his muscular partner and kicks off the lightning-fast charge. As the servant runs right past her, the purple-haired woman harshly demands that the rookie doesn't become a burden in the fight. Focused on running for his life, the former gladiator mentally wonders what the heck that crazy soldier keeps yapping about. The duo dashes like lightning down the hallway of fallen bodies, heading straight for the pack leader. Curious about the reckless tactic, Dak listens to the boy explain that the Blue King is used to being feared, and a fearless attack will shake the beast's confidence. With a look full of dark memories, the hero adds that humans react the exact same way when confronted. Confused by the deep philosophy in the middle of all that chaos, the blonde servant asks what that means. The time traveler brushes the topic off quickly and brings up a crucial point, reminding him they can't hurt the leader with just those worn-out swords. Processing the logical info, his battle buddy's eyes go wide as he realizes what's about to happen. As an immediate answer to his friend's doubts, the fake slave's hands start glowing brightly, channeling a magic powerful enough to wipe the monster out once and for all. The grimoire floats open while the MC fires up his mana circuits, confirming he's recovered max energy to cast the Ice Lotus spell. A massive blast of freezing energy shoots from his hands, hitting the beast head-on. Dak watches the scene in total shock, wondering how it's possible for that boy to use magic. Taking a direct hit from the impact, the great blue flame wolf lets out a furious roar. The fake Colin keeps his sharp gaze, warning that the creature still wants to fight. Even wrapped in ice magic, the king of the pack keeps growling viciously. Without losing momentum, the human duo keeps pushing forward across the battlefield. The magic beast gains momentum and leaps at them, ready to tear them apart. The former gladiator acts fast, jamming his spear right into the monster's open mouth, while the time traveler praises his buddy's quick thinking. Taking advantage of the perfect opening, the hero preps another spell in his hand, declaring that this is the end for that mutt. A magic array appears on the ground as he summons sharp ice spikes right under the enemy's body. The brutal impact sends the giant wolf flying into the air, piercing its defenses with the freezing energy. The creature's red eye reacts upon taking that massive critical damage. The freezing power completely swallows the pack leader's head. A gigantic pillar of light and ice erupts in the middle of the dark forest, marking the end of the clash. Right after, the monster's frozen body starts cracking and shattering in the air. Only the huge wolf's severed head falls to the ground, confirming the threat has been eliminated. Still unable to process what he just saw, the muscular servant mutters that it's impossible. The MC holds a glowing blue crystal in his hands, reflecting on the ability to use magic in that body. Glenn comes running up at the squad and asks if the two of them are okay. The captain thanks them for taking down the king, making the rest of the enemies run off, and asks how they managed to beat something so colossal. An armored boot steps on the ice shards scattered across the grass. Sierra crouches down to inspect the frozen pieces, suspecting that the boy was the one truly responsible for that. Marvin lets out a loud laugh, commenting that looking at the kid reminds him a lot of the boss in his younger days. Dak looks confused at the soldiers, while the bearded veteran clarifies that his subordinate is talking about Lord Darius. The team leader explains they used to be part of the Lionheart Knights led by the Marquis, and after the order was disbanded, they became elite guards, while the female soldier mocks the servant for not knowing that, calling him the old witch's dog. Annoyed by the uncalled-for taunt, the hero's buddy thinks that woman has been running her mouth however she pleases for a while now. Losing his patience, he turns around sharply, demanding to know what the heck she means by that insult. Thumping his chest with a lot of pride, the former gladiator demands she listens closely and states his name is Dak. The purple-haired woman's eyes widen, staring intensely at the man in silence. Confused by the situation, the big guy whispers to Marvin, saying he doesn't get why Sarah called the madam an old witch. Realizing the weight of those words, the man panics that someone insulted the powerful Countess Katrina like that. The elite soldier gives off a deadly aura and steps closer menacingly, asking what part of her looks like an old lady. Sweating bullets, the servant backs up quickly, insisting she's a vibrant young woman in the prime of her youth, while she irritably agrees that the insult makes absolutely no sense. A mysterious voice suddenly echoes, asking what they just said, making everyone look in the same direction. The fake Colin keeps his neutral expression, just watching the scene unfold. The relaxed, joking vibe that was building between the commoners and the guards is instantly shattered. The sound of heavy hooves hitting the dirt grabs the group's attention in the forest. Riding an imposing horse, Freed Hall shows up on the scene, asking what all the commotion is about. The bearded captain addresses the newcomer, calling him young master, while the hero focuses his attention on the arrogant heir. The dark-haired swordsman studies the Marquis' son with a calculating look. Unlike his buddy's calmness, the former gladiator shows a lot of nerves around the noble. The squad kneels in respect. As Freed explains, he heard a ruckus and rode from the camp to check out the situation. Looking down at the ground, the Countess's spoiled son notices something on the battlefield. He asks what happened there, noticing the fallout, and the captain reports they were attacked by a pack of blue flames during the investigation. The bearded veteran praises the two servants, revealing that if it wasn't for their backup, the entire squad would have become monster food. The young lord spots the frozen remains of the Pack King right ahead. He watches the MC use a knife to dig the magic core out of the fallen beast. To hide his true intentions, Freed remarks that they show promise and suggests taking them to the camp to report their achievements to the head of the family. In his dark thoughts, the heir remembers that commoner's nerve in trying to claim the lord's seat. The red-haired noble pictures Marquis Doris's reaction upon finding out the boy was the great savior of the elite guard. He quickly figures out that if his dad learns of this feat, it would put him at a huge disadvantage in the battle for succession. With a look full of malice, the villain decides to change his approach to mess with the guys. Meanwhile, Dax stays kneeling with his head down, sweating from the tension. A sadistic and cowardly smile forms on the noble's face as he sits on his horse. He speaks directly to the hero's partner, saying he was wondering where he had run off to, and assumes he teamed up with the guards purely out of self-interest. The rich kid accuses the servant of trespassing on the hunting grounds and breaking the rules just to steal some of the credit. Hearing the unfair accusation, the big guy's eyes widen, unable to defend himself against the authority. The heir takes a threatening stance, stating that if the servant's sister knew about this, it would be clear he forgot the lesson he learned in the past. The man trembles hearing the indirect threat against his beloved family member, while the fake Colin just observes the cowardice in silence. Taking charge of the situation, the MC greets the young master, calling him a failure. Syrah can't hold back her laughter, finding it hilarious that the kid actually called the noble by that offensive nickname. Freed's face twists with rage, demanding to know what the bold commoner just said. Showing absolutely zero fear, the time traveler explains that those people aren't kneeling because the heir is someone impressive. Glenn and the other soldiers swallow hard, realizing the boy's absurd nerve. The Lord's personal guards are left speechless as the swordsman rubs it in his face that the respect only exists because his mommy is a countess. In a tone full of mockery, the fake slave comments on how nice it must be to act so arrogant just for having important parents. The rich kid tries to intimidate him, claiming he could end someone like him in a flash, but the hero just agrees mockingly, saying he's absolutely right. Directing the flow of the humiliation. The strategist adds that if the Lord really wants to eliminate him, he'll need to ask mommy for permission first. Mimicking a crying child, the MC mocks him, asking if mommy would let him take out the mean slave, publicly crushing the guy's pride. Absolute fury takes over the heir, who grinds his teeth, feeling his ego get totally crushed. Unable to handle the insult, Freed screams at the top of his lungs, ordering his guards to lock up the insolent brat immediately. Instantly, thick magic chains shoot up from the ground around the time traveler. The dark-haired boy keeps his expression totally cold, watching the containment magic close in on him. The magic steel chains wrap tightly around the hero's arm, ready to pin him down without him even trying to resist. The fake lord is quickly pinned down by the thick magic chains while the mercenaries position themselves right behind him. With their faces hidden by hoods and masks, the mysterious thugs keep a tight grip on the ends of the steel chains. Shocked by the situation, The bearded captain immediately recognizes that grim group as the Empire's feared shadows. Sear recalls that the brutality and overwhelming skill of those professionals kept by the Williams family made even nobles tremble just hearing their name. She finds it unbelievable that Countess Katrina trusted the protection of her own son to people of that cruel caliber. Glenn steps in front of the young master, trying to reason that they were only sent by Cornell to help investigate the area. Shooting him a deadly look, the spoiled brat authoritatively asks if the veteran is turning against him too. Sweating bullets, the soldier tries to explain himself, stuttering that he didn't mean to disobey. Keeping his absolute composure, the MC breaks the tension by calling out the squad leader's name. He tells the bearded man not to worry about that incident and just focus on reporting the mission's results to the head of the family. The elite female soldier figures out the boy is just trying to help them escape that mess without ruining the guard's honor. She whispers to the captain that they can't take sides there and that the best choice is to quietly fall back, like the boy suggested. Frustrated by his own helplessness, the veteran clicks his tongue, accepting the harsh reality of the hierarchy. Giving a formal bow, the duo of guards excuses themselves and walks away from the air, leaving the prisoner behind. Staring at his target, the red-haired noble asks if the commoner finally understands his own uselessness, since his destiny is now in the palm of his hand. Never losing his cool, the time traveler flashes a defiant smile, telling the rich kid to just finish him off already if that's what he wants. Freed lets out a suppressed laugh, finding the opponent's unshakable nerve and total lack of awareness incredibly funny. Jerking his sword out of its sheath, the villain excitedly declares that he just had a wonderful idea. The muscular Dak gets a huge scare hearing his own name suddenly called out. The arrogant guy points the weapon at him, warning in a threatening tone that acts of rebellion always come with heavy consequences. Throwing the high-quality blade into the dirt, the heir offers the servant a chance to redeem himself, demanding he pick the weapon off the ground. A twisted smile takes over the noble's face as he gives the direct order for the man to take down his own teammate. Completely paralyzed, the former arena champion can barely believe the nonsense he just heard. While watching the chained prisoner, the Lord promises that if the big guy gets the job done, he will forgive everything that happened today. At that moment, the MC's mind flashes back to the original timeline exactly 1 month after the demonic invasion started. In the chaotic arena, he had been violently thrown to the ground by a colossal monster armed with an axe. A massive sword was thrown from above, stabbing into the dirt right next to where the last swordsman was down. Sitting comfortably on a shadowy throne, the true demon king Colin watched the despair of the captured humans. The sadistic monster casually mentioned that maybe he could be generous and let those prisoners walk away. Back in the ruined scenery, the time traveler and his loyal buddy faced the imposing creature on the throne. The demon lord offered the same twisted deal, stating he would only set them free if one managed to eliminate the other with his own hands. With his eyes glowing a terrifying red, the ruler of darkness flashed his sharp teeth, asking what their choice would be. The MC clenched his fist and tightly gripped the handle of the sword stuck in the ground. Facing his armed companion, the former gladiator stood his ground with his own weapon, waiting for the outcome of that fatal trial. The heavy blade slipped from the big guy's hands, clattering loudly against the dirt floor of the arena. With his face covered in bruises, Dak bitterly confessed that the day their old man passed away was the exact same day as Erica's birthday. The painful childhood memories showed the exact moment he hugged his little sister, crying desperately on the floor. He shared that their mother also got sick shortly after, leaving them both orphaned before they were finally taken in by Marquis de Risi. The big guy explained that by the madam's orders, the girl was sent to the Williams family estate, where he believed she would be safe from the invasion. Amidst tears of pure despair, the warrior begged for the MC to make it out and take care of little Erica in his place. The fake Colin listened closely to the heartbreaking plea, while his friend asked him not to spoil her too much since she was a very picky eater. Sobbing uncontrollably, the man asked them to let the girl know her big brother had become a true knight. The hero offers a sincere apology to his buddy, accepting the burden of carrying his hopes. The blades clashed violently in the middle of the arena, sealing the duo's tragic fate in that apocalyptic future. Back to the reality of the present, the swordsman waits with his arms crossed inside the magic chains as the memory fades. Trembling heavily, the middle-class servant holds the sword offered by the heir at the camp, unable to move a muscle. Annoyed by the delay, Freed raises his voice to get the big guy's attention, questioning the holdup. The noble harshly asks what he is waiting for, while the man stays frozen, gripping the weapon with both hands. The warrior agonizes over the fact that if it wasn't for his friend, they'd all be goners, and he can't simply strike down his own benefactor. Noticing the servant's emotional resistance, the villain adopts a posture full of malice. A psychological torture session begins, where the rich kid asks what his beloved Erica would think if she knew her brother abandoned her for a stranger. The servant gasps in terror, eyes wide open, and mutters he would never do such a thing. Without mercy, the coward asks what the girl must have thought when she found out a knight absolutely needs a top-quality sword. He reveals that the girl started skipping meals to save up and buy the weapon, ending up passing out from exhaustion last week. The warrior's face goes completely pale, discovering the suffering of the person he wants to protect the most. The heir mocks him dirtily, saying that if the big guy is really set on abandoning her, then the Williams family has no more reason to look after the girl. Total despair breaks the former arena champion, who falls to his knees, surrendering to the indirect threat. With a choked voice and his dignity shattered, he begs the young master to spare his sister's future. From atop his horse, the noble watches the lackey groveling and says if that's the case, the solution is simple. With a cruel, devilish smile, the heir repeats the order, telling the soldier to finish off the MC without fail. A low held-back laugh escapes the fake lord's lips at the pathetic attempt at manipulation. Quickly, the chuckle turns into a hysterical, mocking laughter that echoes throughout the clearing. Confused by the highly unusual reaction, the heir ignorantly asks, "What's so funny about all of this?" With a wild smile, the time traveler taunts him, guaranteeing that even a street mutt can bark, but a coward worse than a dog would never be able to take him down. The armed man on the ground looks up, not understanding his own partner's madness and reckless courage. As a crazy proposal, the swordsman suggests the noble allow an extreme duel between the two slaves to make the show way more interesting. The lord narrows his eyes with deep suspicion, trying to figure out the real goal behind that boldness. One of the masked enforcers stays focused, holding the chains tightly without letting his guard down. A smug little smile appears on Freed's face, believing he figured out the kid only wants to fight because he's terrified of the pro-mercenaries. Finding the whole setup pretty entertaining, he accepts the challenge and orders the thugs to release the prey to watch the duel. The containment magic is instantly dispelled, and the heavy links fall to the ground, freeing the hero's arms. The Countess's guards step back, making room and forming a makeshift dirt arena for the fighters. Dak lifts his blade with a heavy body, his face taken over by dark sadness as he gets into a combat stance. With a very hesitant voice, he asks if his buddy is actually serious about this extreme showdown. With a piercing stare, the MC tells his friend to only think about the safety of his precious little sister and not hesitate on the next strike. Sword in hand, the fake lord rushes forward, warning his partner not to make the little girl cry. The big guy raises his weapon to block the attack, taking the direct impact of the enemy blade. The violent clash makes the former gladiator let out a groan of pain as he tries to hold off the charge. Right after the clash of weapons, the MC jumps back, gaining momentum in the air. Surprised by his agility, the middle-class servant watches the movement and recognizes the kid's impressive speed. At that exact moment, the swordsman comes down hard, delivering a relentless vertical strike. Dak quickly crosses his sword, sparking a shower of sparks while the two warriors test each other's strength. With their faces close during the power struggle, the time traveler apologizes to Marquis Darius, explaining that he doesn't want to fall today either. The confident smile on the boy's face shows he has a very well thought-out plan in mind. His arena buddy's eyes go wide, completely shocked by his ally's boldness and bizarre behavior. In a fluid motion, the hero spins his body and lands a powerful kick, sending his opponent flying away while hearing a furious yell. The warrior slides across the packed dirt, trying to regain his balance after the surprise hit. Cool as a cucumber, the swordsman holds up 3 fingers on his left hand, setting the pace of the battle. He states with total conviction that he is going to wrap up this clash in exactly 3 moves. His opponent's face twists in tension upon realizing the real threat coming from that mysterious guy. Annoyed by the taunt, Dak gets into a fighting stance, countering that he doesn't even need 3 moves to win. Their intense stares meet while the fake lord keeps a mocking smile on his face. From high up on his horse, Freed watches the scene closely, letting out a curious murmur. With heavy steps, the big guy charges, sprinting toward the target. The leather boots sink into the dirt, marking the force of the aggressive push. The former arena champ leaps, unleashing a brutal top-down attack while his opponent waits calmly. Right then, a sudden memory invades the man's mind, echoing the kid's voice asking him not to abandon his comrades. The violent clash of swords happens, but the hesitation in the warrior's mind stops him from using his full strength. The overlapping vision of the hooded master in the future repeats the same painful advice. Drops of sweat run down the servant's face, proving the emotional conflict eating him up inside. Taking advantage of the opening, the time traveler slides his feet, shifting positions rapidly. The old witch's masked thugs watch the technical footwork, surprised by his evasive skills. The swordsman breaks his opponent's guard, slipping under the attack with total mastery. A devastating shockwave explodes on the battlefield, throwing dirt and dust everywhere. The colossal warrior is sent flying, letting out an agonized yell, while the soldiers watch the scene in disbelief. The wind kicked up by the impact hits the rich kid's horse, who screams, asking what's going on over there. The legitimate heir grits his teeth, showing his fury as he watches the mess unfold. The defeated opponent's body is launched high into the sky, breaking through the explosion's smoke. The big guy freefalls, letting out a desperate scream. With anger boiling in his veins, the arrogant villain starts manifesting a crackling purple energy around his body. The noble unleashes a blast of magic lightning, while the hero blocks the intense glare with his sword, oozing arrogance. Countess Katrina's son mocks him, saying the slave actually knows how to fight a little bit. The MC returns the smile defiantly, demanding not to be underestimated. That insolence makes the Lord's face twist with pure hatred. The mount charges, surrounded by electrical bursts, while the fake Colin lands smoothly on the dirt. The boy slides back a little, bracing his stance after the tactical landing. Suddenly, something catches the time traveler's attention, and he looks up in surprise. With wide eyes and his mouth open, the noble screams for everyone to stay back. The enforcers freeze right when the aristocrat declares he's the only one with the right to end that human trash. The swordsman's face darkens, showing total focus on the new critical threat. A deafening scream tears from Freed's throat as he maxes out his mana. A giant glowing magic circle expands under the boy's feet, lighting up the whole area. Down on the ground, his injured buddy recognizes the technique and reacts with awe. The grimoire warns about the detection of magic power, while the fake lord watches the electrical storm. With an analytical gaze, the hero realizes the situation is about to get extremely problematic. The system interface reveals that the opponent possesses intermediate-level magical aptitude, and the MC understands the power doubles with each advancement. The screen warns that his resistance is only at a beginner level, making the young man wonder if he will be able to withstand the impact. Determined to test his limits, the swordsman concentrates a blue energy in his left hand, stating that he will only know if he tries. The villain fires off a gigantic lightning bolt, shouting that he will show the true difference in power between them. The young man maintains an unshakable posture, invoking the frigid spell to defend himself. The violent lightning storm collides head-on with a massive barrier of ice. Behind the frozen protection, the time traveler's eyes shine intensely under the pressure of the attack. The explosive impact shatters the magic into thousands of luminous fragments. Confused by the resistance, the Lord waves away the smoke with his arm, wondering if he really just saw magic come from a captive. The dust finally settles, revealing the scenery destroyed by the titanic collision. Still mounted on horseback, the Marquis's son observes the remnants of electrical energy dissipating in the air. Without understanding the situation, he wonders why there are blocks of ice in a place like that. With disdain in his voice, the rich kid asks if that pathetic attack was all the opponent had to offer. From the middle of the smoke, the MC emerges unharmed, and the noble insults him, calling him a total failure. The soldiers of the Divine Guard stammer in disbelief upon seeing that the young man survived the spell. The hulking servant also peeks at the scene with his eyes wide in shock. The villain breaks a cold sweat, questioning if the commoner really used magic, and concludes there must be some dirty trick behind it all. The aristocrat flips out, declaring it impossible for a mere lower-class servant to manifest divine powers. Surrounded by a bluish aura, the fake Colin enters a combat stance, warning that he will never let that spoiled brat defeat him. Suddenly, a system warning appears in red, alerting him that his mana has been depleted, and the boy goes into shock. Without energy, the warrior's body grows heavy, and he falls to his knees, driving his sword into the dirt to keep from collapsing. The swordsman's face shows extreme exhaustion under the shadows of fatigue. Upon noticing the weakness, the opponent starts charging the lightning again, while the hero mutters in frustration. With the lightning crackling violently all around, the noble advances with fierce intent. A frightening roar echoes through the camp as Freed releases his ultimate spell, telling the human trash to be gone once and for all. The purple lightning storm hits the ground with brutal force, illuminating the entire battlefield. In the midst of the destructive energy, the MC lets out an agonizing cry as his body endures the magical charge. With his face full of injuries and his eyes shining intensely, he asks himself if this is where his journey ends. The time traveler's silhouette flickers in the air as he laments that right now, when he had the chance to redo everything, this might be the finish line. The magical grimoire issues a red alert, warning that using magic without enough mana can cause a total loss of control. To avoid this fate, the Fate Colin declares that there is no way he is going down in a place like that. An explosion of blue flames engulfs the swordsman, covering his skin with dark mystical marks. The system interface pops up showing the boy's attributes with all the magic information marked as unknown. Shocked by the sudden energy, he holds his own face, trying to figure out what on earth is happening. Upon feeling the heat of the flames, he notices the sizzling sound and deduces that this transformation won't last very long. Without losing a single second, the hero charges forward at high speed, calling the opponent out to finish this quickly. Faced with the glowing charge, Freed widens his eyes, completely shocked to confirm that it is indeed magic. The noble raises his sword to defend himself while denying reality, saying he has never heard of a spell of that kind. With a fierce roar, the commoner leaps high into the air, preparing a devastating top-down strike. The clash of the swords creates a titanic collision between the blue and purple auras. The impact shatters the ground, throwing massive blocks of energy and ice in all directions in a spectacular display of power. Pressured by the force of the impact, the heir crosses his arms, trying to protect himself from the shockwave. Still mounted on horseback, the rich kid fires more purple lightning in a desperate attempt to fight back. Through the blinding light, the MC's sharp gaze locks onto his target. The two warriors exchange rapid strikes while the magical energy whips around them. Pressured by the swift attack, the villain grits his teeth, feeling the weight of the enemy's strength. Realizing that the situation is slipping out of control, he lets out an angry exclamation. In a fierce move, the Fate Colin delivers a heavy blow, throwing the rider off balance. Freed is thrown backward, sliding across the dirt while yelling at the servant. Breathing heavily, the swordsman remains standing with the blue flames still burning all around him. After regaining his balance, the aristocrat narrows his eyes, analyzing the glowing boy. Extreme fatigue is evident on the hero's face, who struggles to maintain consciousness under the transformation. Noticing the enemy's heavy breathing, the noble smiles confidently, claiming that the trash has already reached its limit. Summoning an even larger electrical storm, Countess Katrina's son prepares for the final strike. With the sword firmly in his hands, the time traveler positions himself to receive the imminent impact. The MC shoots forward, surrounded by the blue aura, determined to put an end to the fight. Leaping over the opponent, he furiously declares that this is the end. The two swordsmen advance for the final clash, their powers glowing at their absolute maximum. Panic takes over Freed's face as the Fate Colin glares at him with fierce intent. Right when the blades were about to meet, a golden magical barrier appears between them, blocking the attack. The burst of energy repels the two fighters, throwing them far away from the impact zone. With his feet sliding across the dirt, the hero lands safely while a mysterious man orders the two of them to stop. Marquis Darius reveals his presence with a glowing magic circle in his hand, reminding them that this is a hunting ground, not an arena. Mounted on an imposing horse, the ruler orders his son to take that fight back home if he wants to spar so badly. Dripping with cold sweat, the rich kid lowers his head, agreeing with his father's order. Recognizing the authority, the MC murmurs the Marquis's name as his aura begins to fade. Completely exhausted, the boy drops to his knees, driving his sword into the ground, relieved that it is finally over. The leader of the Hall family observes the commoner with a serious and calculating expression. Muttering that he can rest now, the swordsman collapses face first into the grass. A few days pass, and the scene cuts to a luxurious chandelier hanging from the ceiling of a quiet bedroom. Slowly opening his eyes, the time traveler mumbles in confusion, asking where he is. Startled by his own situation, he fully wakes up, remembering the bizarre power he had used. With a jump, the boy sits up in bed, quickly throwing the covers to the side. Staring blankly at his own hands, he lets out a sigh of relief, confirming that his body is back to normal. Sitting on a chair nearby, Dak comments in a tired tone that the kid is finally awake. Surprised to hear the familiar voice, the swordsman turns his head toward his colleague. The big guy's miserable appearance gives the MC a scare, making him stammer his name. With deep bags under his eyes and a dreadful look, the former arena champion wishes him a good morning with a slurred voice. To explain recent events, the servant says that the boy simply passed out after that intense fight. He continues the story, mentioning that Captain Glenn had to carry the hero while threatening to bury everyone together if the kid didn't make it. With a drop of sweat rolling down his face, the fake Colin comments that the captain's threat was quite an overreaction. Stepping firmly on the ground, the young man puts on his leather boots, ready to get up. After a good stretch, he announces that he feels recovered and decides to go thank Sarah and the others while looking for something to eat. Suddenly, his roommate catches his attention, reminding him of an important detail. With a relaxed smile, the MC points at his friend, thanking him for his help too. The hulking servant scratches the back of his neck, feeling a bit awkward, thinking that the kid actually knows how to be polite sometimes. Outside, the mansion's courtyard is in full swing, with staff walking back and forth. In the middle of the crowd, the time traveler attracts the attention of some workers, who point at him in surprise. Two guards stop in their tracks and stare at the duo in absolute silence. In a nearby corner, some maids whisper, asking if their friend heard the rumors about that guy and Lord Freed. Bothered by the gossip, the fake Colin asks Dak what is up with everyone there. Before he can finish his sentence, the maids let out a terrified scream and run away. The servant sighs heavily, commenting that their reaction makes it seem like they just saw a ghost. Confused by the situation, the swordsman points to himself, asking who this ghost is supposed to be. To explain the situation, Dak points to his own wrecked face, saying that people get scared of his ghost-like appearance and asks the boy whose fault he thinks that is. The sound of heavy footsteps echoes through the street, catching the attention of the two of them. Complaining, the hero says he never asked to be taken care of when an annoying voice interrupts them mockingly. The one-eyed officer appears with a wicked expression, sarcastically greeting the great future lord. Acting on a protective instinct, the former champion throws himself in front of the boy, apologizing and begging the guard not to cause trouble. Faced with this scene of submission, the Divine Guard's vice captain lets out a murmur of utter confusion, not understanding a thing. Full of anger, the one-eyed officer declares that he came here today to collect on the debt from the other day. The MC simply stares at the guy with a bored expression. Approaching the boy, the guard claims that he was caught off guard last time. With a snap of his fingers, he warns that things will be different this time. Shooting him a threatening look, the man decrees that he won't let it slide. He repeats his speech about how he lowered his guard and was tricked, but that now the outcome will change. With another loud snap, the vice captain summons the Divine Guard Corps to attack. The fake Colin just stands there, watching the soldiers' dramatic performance. A drop of sweat rolls down the one-eyed man's face when he realizes that nothing happened. Desperate, he starts snapping his fingers non-stop while yelling at his subordinates, asking if they forgot such a basic signal. Full of fear, the soldiers mutter that everyone already knows about the brat's fight against the young master, and that picking a fight with that monster is asking for major trouble. Faced with this pathetic situation, Dak lets out a nervous laugh while the hero keeps a deadpan face. Consumed by fury, the officer calls his men useless cowards, thinking that if he backs down now, he'll lose all respect in the Corps. Suddenly, he averts his gaze to the side and lets out an evil little chuckle upon noticing an easier opportunity. His target this time is the former arena champion, who is completely clueless about the sudden shift in focus. In the villain's mind, beating up the hulking servant will be a much faster way to restore his pride. In a sudden move, he grabs Dak by the collar, yelling about how the wretch dares to betray Lord Freed. The muscular guy barely has time to react, while the coward warns that he is going to step in for the young master. About to deliver a direct punch to the target's face, the officer claims he will punish him right then and there. However, before the impact happens, the MC's hand catches the aggressor's fist with terrifying firmness. The vice captain widens his only visible eye, utterly shocked by the speed of the interruption. The hero shoots him a cold glare, warning that a piece of trash like him has no right to judge anyone in the mansion. With an aggressive shove, the swordsman tosses the soldier's arm aside. Dripping with cold sweat, the one-eyed man steps back while his subordinates ask if he is okay, and he indignantly thinks about the audacity of that servant. At that exact moment, the sound of approaching metal footsteps catches the entire courtyard's attention. Captain Glenn appears irritated, demanding to know the reason for so much mess first thing in the morning. Accompanied by Marvin and Sarah, the veteran complains that the squad can't even have coffee in peace, while the corrupt officer recognizes the newcomers. A wicked smile appears on the coward's face as he deduces that those kids' luck has run out, since elite knights never forgive causing a scene. Promptly, the vice captain takes a knee with fake respect, kissing up to the trio and offering to give the official report of the commotion. Pointing an accusing finger at the duo, he makes up a story that he was merely teaching some manners to those idiotic captives. Not giving a single care about the false accusation, the fake Colin raises his hand and greets the knights with a friendly smile. The one-eyed man panics, calling the boy an insolent fool and asking if he has lost his mind, disrespecting his superiors. To the soldier's shock, Marvin simply walks right past him and pats the MC on the shoulder, laughing that he knew the kid would wake up today. Completely dumbfounded, the vice captain lets out an exclamation of disbelief. Right behind them, Sarah celebrates winning the bet and demands a drink from Marvin, who grumbles, thinking she plotted something with Doc to win the wager. Sweat pours profusely down the officer's face as he wonders internally if this is all just an illusion. With a trembling voice, he tries to argue that low-class servants fraternizing with the elite is a direct violation of the household rules. Suddenly, the purple-haired female soldier grabs the coward's shoulder, warning him that the group couldn't care less about that old hag countess's rules. With a look of pure menace, she tells the trash to keep his mouth shut if he doesn't want to lose his other eye too. The bearded captain ends the discussion, calling his squad to leave while the Divine Guards stand frozen in fear. Before following the group, the time traveler shoots a mocking smile at the enemy, pointing out that it looks like he won again. Then, the scene cuts to the lively sound of wooden mugs clinking in a city tavern. The group, now sitting at the table, listens to the MC explain that he planned to go to them to say thanks for their previous help, but ended up being saved again in the courtyard. With a relaxed giggle, Sarah comments that everything worked out because she never liked that stuck-up guard, and besides, the boys are their great benefactors. Mug in hand, the former arena champion shyly asks if the girl also has some history of rivalry with that punished officer. After chugging the drink at once, creating an aura of pure flames, Sarah tells her friend not to ask tough questions to avoid ruining the taste of the beer, prompting Dak to apologize immediately. Trying to steer the conversation, the captain clears his throat, drawing attention to himself. In a much more serious tone, he explains that the trio is all that's left of the elite knights, and because of that, he would like to invite the two young men to fill the open spots. The sudden proposal catches the duo off guard, making the big guy gulp, shocked at the idea of becoming members of the main squad. The veteran assures them that if they accept the position, they will receive the exact same treatment as the high-level servants of the Hall family. Keeping a serene expression, the fake Colin politely declines the invitation, stating that he has no interest in becoming an elite soldier. With an extremely confident smile, the hero reveals that he harbors much bigger ambitions for his future. He reinforces his point, saying that becoming an Imperial Guard would limit the potential he aims to reach. The MC's presumptuous posture makes it clear that he aspires to dominate the top of that noble family's hierarchy. The knight trio falls completely silent, just staring at the boy with admiration and a bit of surprise at such audacity. Somewhat annoyed, Marvin tells the brat not to get too carried away just because he got lucky defeating Lord Freed with some weird swordsmanship, reminding him that there are other prodigies out there. With a heavy slap on her partner's back, Sarah completely disagrees with the theory and swears that bizarre move was pure magic, no matter how you look at it. Totally hyped up, she points at the time traveler, betting that he used spells to take down the Blue Wolf King in the forest, which makes the boy's blood run cold. The hot-headed soldier's eyes widen in confusion, wanting to know how a useless former captive would learn to conjure magic. With a piercing and suspicious look, the squad leader demands that the commoner explain this story in detail. Internally, the MC sighs in frustration, realizing that the knights really did notice the mana fluctuation during the battle. Lowering his head to hide his nervousness, he mentally gives thanks for already having a lame excuse prepared for this exact situation. While Dak looks at his companion with concern, the young man maintains a calm posture, waiting for the right moment to act. With her eyes sparkling with excitement, the purple-haired female soldier breaks the silence, claiming that she already knows the whole truth. The swordsman focuses his curious gaze to find out what that woman's crazy move will be. With the smile of someone who just cracked the world's biggest mystery, she points her finger right in the boy's face. An awkward silence takes over the entire table when she yells that the boy is actually a former noble, making the hero nearly collapse from secondhand embarrassment. Shaking the guy's shoulders, the female knight makes up that he is the illegitimate son of a lord who was harshly persecuted and forced into servitude due to a massive political conspiracy. Completely immersed in her own fiction, she swears up and down that his true goal in coming to work at the Marquis's mansion is something very deep. Sierra's mind even projects a tragic scene of the fake Colin in the rain, swearing to gain power to recover everything his family lost. The former arena champion breaks a cold sweat, completely lost in the conversation, wondering where on earth that woman got this absurd idea. With no other way out, the time traveler lets out a forced laugh, deciding to ride the wave of this made-up story to cover up his system powers. He dramatically confesses that he can't believe she saw through his disguise, making Marvin slam his fist on the table in tears, calling the Empire's nobles trash. With fake tears streaming down his face, the MC lies that he was from the wealthy city of Ale but was kicked out due to a terrible setup and had to become a servant so he wouldn't starve. With his fist raised in an award-worthy performance, he swears fierce revenge against the nobles who framed him, while the elite soldiers cry rivers of pity over the tragic story. Setting the charade aside, the fake Colin thinks to himself that there is not the slightest chance Captain Glenn will fall for such a flimsy lie. To his total surprise, the bearded man grabs his shoulders firmly, assuring him that he understands the situation and promises to keep the secret as long as it doesn't cause problems for the Marquis. With an awkward smile, the hero agrees, while the veteran warns him never to use magic in front of Lady Katrina or the young master. Before saying goodbye, the squad leader informs him that Lord Darius wishes to see him as soon as he has recovered. After the conversation, the time traveler and the big guy quietly go on their way down the corridors. The two of them walk away calmly, leaving the elite knights behind. With a thoughtful expression, Glenn reflects on this city of Ale mentioned in the tragic story. As they walk through the courtyard, the MC still can't believe that massive lie actually worked. Curious about the choice, Dak asks why his companion decided to confirm the story of being a former noble from that specific city. Keeping his cool, the swordsman explains that Ale is known for being a true melting pot that mixes all kinds of good and bad people. Besides, the place is very far from the Rhine territory, making any investigation practically impossible, which turns the noble past into the perfect disguise. The former gladiator agrees that the tactic is excellent for throwing off anyone trying to snoop into their lives. Right after, the muscular servant hesitates a bit and mentions he has been thinking about something else for a while. He then asks if his friend knows about something called the three-legged crow, making the boy stop and turn around with his hand raised. Seeing the strange pose with the fingers stretched out, Dak asks if that is also just another trick to fool others. At that moment, the MC's mind travels to a memory from his past life where he was wielding a sword facing a monster holding a hostage. On that tragic occasion, he had apologized to Dak with a heavy expression on his face. The swordsman's grim look showed the weight of a terrible decision. In the blink of an eye, he lunged forward fiercely, severing the horned creature's arm in a splash of crimson to free his companion. Sword in hand, he yelled that the pathetic goodbye message his friend wanted to send to his sister wouldn't be delivered. Wrapped in an intense magical aura, he ordered the warrior himself to deliver the message in person. Channeling all his power, the hero shot like lightning toward the colossal enemy. The blade of his weapon shined brightly, carrying a devastating energy. The monster just let out a mocking laugh, confident that the attack would amount to nothing. However, the flaming strike with blue flames tore through the air and pierced the creature's body fiercely. The spell's impact made the MC cough in pain, suffering from the recoil of his own strength. Ignoring the wound, the red-eyed demon sneered, asking if a piece of trash like him really thought he could take him down. With a violent blow, the monster threw the time traveler backward, taunting that it would be a problem if he forgot something important. Sliding across the floor after the impact, the hero raised his head and finished the sentence, stating that he was also there in the fight. The creature widened its eyes in fury upon realizing the fallen soldier's insolence. Giving no quarter, a new burst of magical energy swept across the battlefield in a lightning-fast attack. The fake Colin panted heavily, feeling extreme exhaustion take over his body after the effort. A merciless flurry of cuts tore through the enemies, turning the area into a complete mess of battle. Standing amidst the fallen, the exhausted warrior heard the old Dak complain that his final words were called pathetic, just because they were too long to remember. The memory shows the big guy furious, yelling that the swordsman would have fallen if it weren't for him, and demanding a thank you for not getting chopped up in the process. The injured companion kept yelling desperately, questioning what would have happened if the hostage had met their end because of that crazy maneuver. Without breaking character, the MC shot back immediately, stating that even if he had hit his ally, the monsters would never have let them walk out of there anyway. The argument heated up with the friend demanding a heads-up signal for the surprise attack, while the hero joked about whether he should have shouted out the move and promised to do so next time. Around them, the other captives from the camp simply watched the bizarre argument in total silence. The bickering went on, with the time traveler telling his colleague to stop exaggerating, since just a minute ago he was whining for Erica's name. The scene cuts back to the present, where the former arena champion looks confusedly at the boy's intertwined fingers. The MC then explains that this is the sign of the three-legged crow, a gesture he learned from a certain Rowan back in their old association days. Displaying the hand formation, he reveals that if the person is a comrade, they will definitely offer help upon seeing the symbol. In his mind, the hero remembers the exact moment in the past when Dak himself, while captured, made that very same sign to him during an ambush. The nostalgic memory brings back his friend's voice complaining about being captured again and telling the stubborn warrior to shut his mouth. Back in reality, the fake Colin lowers his hand and mentions that he learned the trick from someone who has already passed away. With a melancholic smile on his face, he describes this master as his stupid and extremely stubborn best friend. The hulking servant gets thoughtful, trying to jog his memory to see if there was any guy with that profile back in the old days. The setting changes to the main office door, where firm knocks announce the duo's arrival, and they are granted permission to enter. Inside the luxurious room, Marquis Darius waits, seated at his desk, and calls the boy's name. With a serene posture, the gray-haired noble asks how the young man is feeling after the intense battle. The MC thanks him for his concern and assures him that he is fully recovered. In a gesture of respect, Dak greets the leader of the Hall family, hearing in response that it had been a while since their last meeting. With a controlled sigh, the ruler reveals that he called the two of them there for a very specific reason. Holding some papers, he explains that he needs to discuss the serious incident that took place in the hunting grounds. A drop of sweat rolls down the hero's face, fearing he'll get scolded for trespassing in the restricted area without permission. The Marquis stands up from his chair and walks slowly around the office, recalling that he has known Captain Glenn and his men for a very long time. He remembers the countless intense situations they survived together in the past, forging an unbreakable bond. The veteran admits that after fighting so hard to get where they are today, he can't even imagine the pain of losing them. Turning around with a sincere smile, the noble thanks them from the bottom of his heart for having saved the elite trio. Looking down, the Lord laments that if they had noticed the anomaly in the forest a bit sooner, more comrades could have been saved. To brush the blame away from the boys, he shakes his head and makes it clear that neither of the two made any mistake on the mission. The ruler takes full responsibility for the tragedy, admitting that he failed to foresee the monster's surprise attack. Next, the Marquis changes the subject and notes that they must have already heard the elite squad's proposal through Glenn, asking to hear their official response. True to his previous decision, the fake Colin apologizes politely and turns down the invitation once again. A bit surprised by the continuous rejection, the noble shifts his gaze to the big guy and asks what his choice is. In a total panic, Dak stammers and waves his hands, not knowing how to react to being personally invited by the Lord to join the royal guard. The servant breaks a cold sweat, arguing that he couldn't even become an official member, and suggests the spot go to someone more capable, but the MC interrupts him, reminding him that the head of the family wants to know what he truly wants. The former gladiator clenches his fists, swallowing the fear and insecurity accumulated over years of submission in the mansion. After working up his courage, he puffs out his chest and shouts with all his might that he does indeed want to become an elite knight. Satisfied with the answer, the ruler approves the decision and soon turns to the time traveler, asking if he has any other special request. The young swordsman pretends to think for a moment before flashing a small, confident smile. In a serious and direct tone, the boy mentions his loyal companion's little sister. He then formally requests that Erica be transferred from the Williams family household directly under the Hall family's protection. Upon hearing his sister's name, the new elite soldier's eyes widen, completely shocked by his friend's attitude. Confirming the request without hesitation, the swordsman explains that the two siblings had always been together up until the moment they were brought to the Hall family. He points out that the girl has a weak constitution and is certain that the big guy really wants to be by her side to protect her. The gray-haired lord listens closely and serenely questions if that is truly the boy's wish. Shooting a sidelong glance at his ally, the MC argues that they are true brothers in arms who have fought side by side, and being close friends, he couldn't ignore him in a time of need. Hearing these words, the former gladiator is left in awe and speechless in the face of his companion's unshakable loyalty. Standing before the imposing painting on the wall, the fake Colin concludes his plea, formally asking the noble to return the sister to his friend. Reflecting on the reasoning, the Marquis murmurs thoughtfully about the importance of this friendship, forged on the battlefield. Understanding the situation, the ruler asks Dak to leave the office, advising that the process will involve the Williams family and therefore take some time. As the servant quickly exits the room, Darius's deep voice calls out the time traveler's name. With the big guy out of the room, the two are left alone in a thicker atmosphere under the light pouring in from the large windows. Glancing sideways, the veteran asks if the young man remembers the day he challenged Viscount Slaith to a fight in the arena. Pacing slowly across the hall, he admits that even back then, he was fully convinced that the young man wasn't just a common captive. The noble recalls the moment the boy took a direct magical attack and still came out victorious without a single scratch, confessing that it surprised him a lot. Turning completely toward the hero, he reveals that the biggest shock, however, happened during the duel against the heir Freed a few days prior. In his memory, the intimidating image of the swordsman wrapped in a dark and overwhelming aura resurfaces, displaying surreal power. The noble keeps his eyes fixed on the boy and notes that if a persecuted aristocrat from the city of Ale just wanted his old life back, there would be countless ways to achieve that. Quickly realizing where the conversation was heading, the MC interrupts the train of thought, calling the Marquis in a sharp tone. Without warning, he raises his right hand as ice crystals begin to materialize in the air out of nowhere. Cloaked in a frigid energy, the fake commoner openly declares that he is not as grand a figure as the Lord imagines. Small frozen shards continue to pop up around his body as he labels himself merely someone capable of using a little magic. With a confident smile and the fragments floating around the office, the hero quips that to a Grand Master-level mage, someone as ordinary as him must seem like a trivial existence. Focusing on the ice stones right in front of him, the veteran counters that the idea of an ordinary person using magic is pretty hard to swallow. Taking a firm step forward, the leader of the Hall family demands to know exactly who the young man truly is. Resting his hand on his chest, the swordsman dodges the direct question and praises the Marquis, calling him the greatest of lords for loving and being loved by his people. In a fluid motion, he slides his left hand down to the hilt of his sword, catching the ruler's attention. With the blade drawn in a position of respect, the boy highlights that the noble values true skill over bloodlines and says he is honored to be recognized by such a man. Kneeling on the rug, the time traveler reveals that his great goal is to realize Darius's own ideal, rooting out blood supremacy in that world. Maintaining his bow, he adds that one day he also plans to become a fantastic ruler, just like his benefactor. With his head held high and a determined look, the young man states that ultimately, his supreme desire is to surpass the Marquis himself. Faced with this audacious statement, the veteran silently watches the young man declare that he will make a point to prove his strength in the upcoming selection test, to repay the 2 times his life was saved by him. Surprised by the boy's uncommon courage, the Lord widens his eyes for a split second before a satisfied smile spreads across his face. A booming laugh echoes throughout the room as the noble finds the situation hilarious, telling the boy to decide how he'll use him after seeing what his authority is truly capable of. Pleased with his subordinate's boldness, the gray-haired man returns to a serious stance and challenges him to show what he's really made of, dismissing him from the meeting. Thanking him for the opportunity, the hero gives a slight bow and turns his back, ready to leave the office. Before reaching the doorknob, he stops abruptly and says he'd like to ask the Lord one final question. Casually turning his head, the fake Colin asks what the ruler's opinion is regarding a guy named Rowan. The mention of the name catches the veteran off guard, making him simply repeat the word with a completely puzzled expression. Seeing that the noble had no idea what he was talking about, the MC quickly brushes it off, asking him to forget about it. With a final nod of respect, the swordsman exits the room, closing the large wooden doors behind him. Alone in the spacious hall, Darius goes back to admiring the view from the window and asks the wind what impression was left by that theatrical performance. Suddenly, the space behind him distorts with purple sparks, and a dense shadow begins to take shape on the room's rug. The butler, Cornell, emerges from the shadow magic as he listens to his boss state that if the boy is truly just an ordinary person, he might very well be considered an absolute genius. Bowing elegantly, the bespectacled lackey deduces that based on the previous reaction, the young man doesn't know the leader Rowan, proving he doesn't belong to the nobility of Ale. Despite this confirmation, the servant warns with a suspicious look that the outsider might be hiding ulterior motives, demanding heightened surveillance inside the mansion. Silently agreeing, the Marquis focuses his melancholic gaze on a picture frame on the desk, murmuring that, after all, there is already a painful precedent for this kind of situation. The golden frame displays an old painting of Darius next to the arrogant Countess Katrina, serving as a bitter reminder of the precedent mentioned in the conversation. With his usual flawless posture, the head butler adjusts his glasses and clears his throat, drawing the Lord's attention once more. As soon as he hands a sealed envelope to his boss, he informs him that the spirit cat's message has just arrived, making the veteran sigh about how fast time flies. With the letter firmly in his hands, the ruler wonders mentally about what kind of valuable information the feline spy managed to gather, this time in the lower districts. Far from the main mansion, the little magical feline gracefully jumps across the roof of a rustic building, completing its espionage mission. The scene cuts to the MC's room, where boxes full of medicine and gold coins are stacked, thanks to the Marquis keeping the spoils of battle that allowed for this advantageous trade. While admiring a shiny magic stone, the hero cheers inwardly, knowing that this amount of supplies will be crucial to boost his skills before the exam. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he twirls the small core between his fingers, but can't shake the annoying question of who on earth this Rowan guy is. In his past life, the swordsman had only heard that name from Doc himself, and he regrets not having any other clue about the guy in the current timeline. Frowning, he goes over his old arena buddy's attitude, realizing the question was asked with absurd casualness, as if it were obvious that the crow symbol should be known. Not wanting to rack his brain over unsolved mysteries, the young man crushes the magic jewel and pours its dense powder into an alchemy glass vial. After shaking the container to mix the violet potion, the guy decides to drop the subject since his main focus now is to get much stronger for the dreaded selection test. In a swift motion, he brings the bottleneck to his lips and downs the glowing liquid all at once, swallowing the exotic mixture without hesitation. A long sigh escapes the boy's lips as he relaxes his shoulders in the dark room, waiting for the strengthening effect to kick in on his exhausted body. With his left eye glowing intensely in a bluish hue, he activates the system interface, demanding the immediate opening of the magic grimoire. Immediately, the ancient book materializes floating in the air, while dozens of glowing pages start circling the boy in a powerful whirlwind. Without breaking his training rhythm, he grabs another potion vial and roughly chugs the purple contents. After tossing the empty glassware on the floor, the young man piles up even more spent vials, creating a little mess on the inn's wooden floor. With a hardened expression, he concentrates the newly acquired unstable energy within his mana channels, preparing for the dangerous cellular conversion. Bringing all the power close to his chest, the dark-haired warrior orders his body to absorb the substance, releasing small discharges of blue lightning. The power overload makes the veins in his face bulge frighteningly, while he grits his teeth, enduring the high physical stress of the forced process. A contained explosion of frigid aura sweeps the room in all directions, confirming that the potion's raw energy was successfully assimilated into his system. The holographic system screen blinks in front of him, notifying that the absorption is complete and his magic power has increased by 1 point, leaving the hero extremely out of breath. Looking to the grimoire's information, he reflects that mixing a Flame Wolf's core with Emperor's Grass should drastically strengthen his magic, but even the best medicine only yielded 3 measly points, while the cheaper doses barely provide a noticeable increase. Holding another colorful liquid, the swordsman acknowledges that if his mana runs out mid-combat, the spells will lose control, just like before, forcing him to keep pushing his power limit until he finds a way to improve his own natural magic resistance. The fake Colin forces the liquid down his throat, making a nasty face of disgust and grumbling that the taste of this alchemical junk is absolutely undrinkable. Surrounded by a sea of empty vials, he almost gets sick to his stomach and concludes that if he keeps drinking them one by one, the sun will rise before he finishes, or worse, his stomach will explode. Staring at his status screen, which now displays exactly 20 points of magic power, the exhausted young man wonders if there isn't a less painful shortcut to speed up the process. At that exact moment, the panel issues an alert stating that it detected the Shadow Forest monster core, suggesting the creation of a magic tool using this item as base material. Holding the sphere of pure blue energy, the MC cheerfully reflects on the genius idea of turning that beastly heart straight into a practical item. Excited by the system's suggestion, the swordsman touches the holographic panel and notes that this idea of creating a tool sounds pretty interesting. Wasting no time, he focuses the energy in his hands and begins casting the spell on the monster jewel. With a focused gaze, the young man maintains absolute control of the mana flow to avoid causing any accidents in the room. A massive golden aura takes shape behind him, manifesting the image of a beast holding a giant hammer as light floods the room. Following the grimoire's instructions to the letter, he pours his own magic right into the unstable core. While shaping the pure energy, the fake Colin tries to picture what the ideal form for the new magic item would be. With a smirk, he quickly makes up his mind regarding the tool's design. The light between his fingers intensifies, gradually taking the shape of a circular accessory. Behind him, the spiritual manifestation raises the glowing hammer, ready to forge the condensed energy. Upon the generation command, the beast brings down the mystical sledgehammer, causing an impact of pure light right in the middle of the room. The glow of creation is so bright that it illuminates the inn's window, breaking through the darkness of the night outside. Gradually, the light's intensity dims, revealing the hero sitting on the floor with a calmer breathing. The system immediately pops up a notice stating that the magic tool generation has been successfully completed. Observing the newly created blue bracelet on his left wrist, the warrior reads the screen indicating a 1-point increase in magic power and the acquisition of a special effect called Wild Intuition. Reflecting on the Wolf King's blessing attached to the item, he grabs one more potion vial to test a theory. Gulping down the violet liquid all at once, the young man wonders if his guess about the accessory is actually right. The holographic panel confirms that the magic power increased by 2 points, raising the total to 22, which brings a satisfied smile to the guy's face. Clenching his fist with the glowing bracelet, he deduces that thanks to the item, even a cheap medicine that would normally yield only 1 point now provides double without all that absorption stress, proving just how useful magic tools are. However, the question of how the second effect, this wild intuition, works still lingers in his mind. Exhausted from so much training, the hero lets out a long yawn, getting ready to finally rest. Suddenly, his left eye glows intensely and he realizes his vision has changed drastically. Through the bedroom wall, the boy can see the red silhouettes of 2 maids stretching and complaining about being sleepy out in the hallway. Spooked by the bizarre sight, he lets out a shout of surprise that ends up catching the attention of the maids on the other side of the door. Regaining his composure, the fake Colin realizes it isn't X-ray vision, but rather the ability to see the life energy of the people around him. With his eyes still glowing, he tests the skill's range by looking through the building's walls and spotting the luminous silhouettes of the guard soldiers patrolling the streets. Focusing his vision a bit further, the swordsman notices two much larger presences, one being a blue flame and the other a black aura, immediately recognizing them as Marquis Darius and Countess Katrina. In the middle of this observation, a sinister and shadowy voice suddenly echoes in his mind, complaining about being very hungry. Confused and with a drop of sweat rolling down his face, the MC looks around, trying to figure out where on earth that starving voice is coming from.